going live. Connecting. And there we go. I think we are live on everything, I think. That's fantastic. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the stream. Kind of a not a very well planned out stream. I've been rattling with all sorts of technical problems, and I couldn't schedule the stream because scheduling has been a bit of a nightmare. But I would like to introduce you to one of my subscribers, good friend of the channel, Clayton Rumley. Welcome, Clayton.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Richard.
Oh, thank you for coming on. It's a genuine pleasure to have you here. I do like to converse with my subscribers as regularly as I can. Obviously, things are a little bit hectic and busy now and then, but thank you so much for coming on. It's a genuine pleasure.
No, I'm happy to be here. Longtime fan. I think I discovered you during either your Picard reviews or your Discovery reviews, but I've watched all those. I like your art channel. It inspired me to start my own reviews of the new Quantum Leap Revival series, which I post on my channel, and I'm majorly behind on because life gives me so little time to work on the things I want to do.
I hear, to be fair, that's one of the reasons why over the last sort of 6 months, the amount of videos that were coming out of my channel were somewhat lacking, because it just life got very busy. And for, as we were saying before the stream, some of the life can just get in the way of a lot of things. But no, I've seen your videos, I've seen your channel, and I'm really impressed. Your production values are really high. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and you're not just some rambling crazy person like me, just blurting stuff out. What I like is that everything's well formed, well thought of, and you tend to cover a lot of different areas of each episode that you review. So it's really great to know that someone's decided to do something based on some very little YouTube channel that's in the corner, dark recesses of YouTube. But it's nice to know that the channel has sort of bred that, I suppose. But we're here today to talk about Star Trek in general, and I suppose a good place to start would be to sort of go through your history with the franchise and where you sort of started watching it and go from there.
Well, I'm a bit of an odd duck. I've been blessed or cursed with a very excellent memory that stretches far back in time. So I have memories of being a toddler, a few memories that be arguably crib memories, but.
Wow.
Here in Canada, when I was a little kid, the CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, would run reruns of the original series on Sunday mornings, early in the morning. And so I'd wake up and turn on the TV, and there it would be. And so I saw a lot of TOS when I was a kid. I was too young to often get a lot of like the nuance or the messaging behind stuff. It was just like, oh, they've got transporters, they got ray guns, etc. It wasn't until TNG started when I was 10 that I really fell in love with the franchise. I loved the ship. I loved the Enterprise D. I loved the crew. Data was a favorite character, of course. And me being a little kid, I even liked Wesley Crusher because he was a kid getting to do all this cool stuff on the Enterprise. And it's like, I want to be that, even though everybody hates Wesley, right? But and then as I got older, I stayed watching with Deep Space Nine when it started. Now this was back in the 90s when we only had free to air channels where I lived. So we had like 4 or 5 channels, and one of them was French here in Canada. So you basically watched whatever was on. But because it was also, it was an era where like the major league baseball series would like preempt episodes of Star Trek, or you Deep Space Nine as a serialized show was great to watch, but when you're watching it once a week, where they'd air like 4 episodes, break for a month, air a couple more, break for a month, it's a lot harder to follow the story along. You don't have it downloaded that you can rewatch or anything unless you sit there with a VHS tape and record. So when I watched DS9 organically the first time, I didn't appreciate it as much. I got into Voyager heavily too. I really liked Voyager, and I know that's like a terrible thing to say because not a lot of people liked Voyager. Uh, Granted, it got really good after season 3, or once season 3 started, but it really did turn into the Seven and Doctor show at the end.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And my other controversial statement is that I really liked Enterprise, and not a lot of people did. And I think some of it just tends to be where I was at in terms of age. I was in my early 20s when Enterprise started, and it was like uh, Jonathan Archer, played by Scott Bakula, who of course played Sam Beckett in the original Quantum Leap. I already really liked him as an actor. He was already like my father's generation, like a parental type figure. And most of the crew were in my age range, the 20 somethings. Travis and Hoshi and Malcolm and all that. They were in that age range. So it felt like if right now I could be in Starfleet, that would be the sort of ship I was on. And because they decided to do a prequel series, which was a double-edged sword, of course, it did move the humans in that series closer to our time. So they
Yeah.
were more like us, and it was believable that they'd be more like us. They were headstrong and not as diplomatic as like the humans of TNG era. I really like that series. I think the first season was a little underwhelming. There are a couple really good diamonds in the rough episodes of that season. The Zindi arc was interesting, and I get that what was going on politically in the United States at the time, that was just kind of the storyline that they decided to follow. There were a lot of good episodes in the Zindi story arc that uh, were like those uh, episodes that provide you a question where the question isn't answered. It's a moral choice that has to be made. The pros and cons are given. A decision's ultimately made, but nobody's sure if it's the right one, and it's left up to the viewer to contemplate it afterwards. And those are really some of the strongest episodes of any Star Trek series. Um, Enterprise ended terribly. These Are the Voyages was a miserable episode, and I remember watching it live and just being so like, wow, that's how they're ending this. And
Yeah.
all the lead up to the big speech that Archer's going to give that sets the ground for the Federation, and the writers couldn't even be bothered to write it, and they just computer end program, and it's a too old Riker and Troy pretending to fit into their TNG era outfits.
You're not
Um,
wrong.
and so yeah, and just before then they had like the TNG era movies. The First Contact I enjoyed a lot. Insurrection, eh, didn't really. It was a thing that happened, and Nemesis. It just, I was hoping it would be as good as First Contact, because you got sucked into that whole what was it, the odd number movies are bad and the even number movies are good,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
whichever it is.
yeah, absolutely.
And so Nemesis was supposed to be the good one, and it really wasn't. And so it just kind of ended on a bit of a sour note for me. And I guess everybody was saying that the Trek had been oversaturated, and everybody was tired of Trek, and so they left it alone. And then when they announced the Abrams reboots, I was happy to hear there was going to be a new Star Trek movie. I was upset to hear that they were rebooting TOS. Like the whole thing with the not cinematic, but just the universe created by Roddenberry and through the various Star Treks we've had up till then, is that there are a whole like infinite number of things you could do with that series. And we just keep falling back on the member berries because people will come to see Kirk, right? Like, and of course, then it becomes, then 2009 Star Trek became, just an action movie with a lot of lens flares and people in Starfleet uniforms. Um, and if there's one thing I hate about those movies, because you could be like, oh, it's in an alternate timeline, even if you don't like it, it's fine, it's in the Kelvin timeline, etc. But they established that the Romulan star, or Romulus's star, went supernova, and that's what killed Spock or whatever. And so they had to carry that into the main timeline franchise.
Mm.
And so they've made reference to that, and it's just caused a whole bunch of, I don't know. It seems like, why would one star blowing up be such a galactic event? The Romulan Star Empire presumably occupies several star systems. So even if their main star blows up, they got other planets. They would have outposts. They have, in theory, the Romulan Star Empire is probably just like a federation. They probably occupy other worlds and have people from other cultures working for them. And it just seems so narrowly myopic. Yeah, that was one aspect I really didn't like about it. And then they announced the new series of Discovery, and I was super excited. And I watched the first episode, and they had those changes to the Klingons' appearance where they looked like they were in corsets and completely rigid bodies. The prosthetics were so heavy it sounded like there were marbles in their mouths while they were talking. Even their subtitles, they decided to write in like a jagged Klingon-like font in English, so it just made it harder to read. And that's design criticism, but like then the whole story just, it looked like post TNG era tech, but set 10 years before Kirk. And yeah, Discovery kind of went off the rails for me. And then I was less enthusiastic when they announced Picard, because by the time we had been through a few seasons of Discovery, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And I watched the first season and thought this was not a very good season. I did not like the storyline. There's a lot of convoluted nonsense about like recreating data from one positronic neuron, like
The
like
fractal neuronic cloning.
and terrible things like what they did to Icheb.
Oh, oh, wow. The trauma.
As a fan of Voyager, it's like I want to see what happened to the Voyager crew
Mm-hmm.
post Voyager. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
see what
yeah.
happened to them. And we see Icheb for 3 minutes, and he's screaming and getting his eye ripped out. And like, okay, well,
Oh, poor
thanks
Echep.
for that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so yeah, and then Picard season 2 had that great first episode, or at least not as bad first episode,
Mm-hmm.
that got everybody all excited, and then the rest was absolute confusing garbage.
Yeah,
um
yeah. And then some.
yeah, and then here we are in season 3.
Season 3. The oddball of the lot, I think.
Yeah, so far, like, yes, it is better than the previous 2 seasons of Picard and everything that Discovery has put forward so far, but those are really low bars. It's like taking a high jumper to a limbo competition.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, well, I mean, that is ever the comprehensive breakdown of how Star Trek, how you've followed Star Trek over the last decades, and it's. I'll be honest with you, I was smiling a lot and nodding a lot simply because that's pretty much mirrors my experience as well. Um, because I started with the original series much in the same way that you did, and I was too young to understand really what was going on, like you said, understanding the nuances. Um, and when Next Generation came out, I took an immediate dislike to it simply because it wasn't what I was used to. But that faded very quickly, and I know a lot of people go through this process with new things. It takes time for people to adapt to new things. And when New Trek sort of reared its head, people were like, well, yeah, everybody hated The Next Generation when that first came out, and now they love it. But I'm not seeing that same effect with New Trek. But The Next Generation really grew on me, and it fast became one of my favourite Star Trek series. And Deep Space Nine, I had exactly the same effect. The first time I ever heard about Deep Space Nine was when Christmas morning, when I'd opened up a VHS of The Forsaken and Dramatis Persona, or whichever way round that was, those two episodes, because on VHS you could only fit 2 episodes onto a tape. So by the time you'd watched an hour and a half, and then your VHS was over. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of Deep Space Nine, to the point where I looked up at my mother and I says, what is it? Because all I saw was Deep Space Nine. And she says, it's Star Trek. I says, is it? And then we watched it, and it was all out of context, because it was like the 12th or 13th episode of the first season, or whatever it was. And I was sort of thinking, but this doesn't feel like Star Trek. This is a lot darker. It's set on a space station. Why don't they have a ship? Why aren't they going off exploring strange new worlds? And then I think I was part of a book club. It's like a mail order book club. And they had the entire series in... I don't know whether they did this in Canada, but they had the entire series, and it was in a very long box, and you had your 13 VHSs for the 26 episodes. And that came as a box set. So after some begging and pleading, I'd actually gotten that and watched the entire first season. I really liked it, but I didn't like it as much as The Next Generation. But I did with the opening episode. I'm thinking, there's Picard. There's Picard. It's The Next Generation. They're here. Oh, there's Chief O'Brien, and he's now in the show. Oh, right, okay. Because I couldn't figure out why Chief O'Brien was in the show. And then obviously Voyager came out. And I stuck with those 3 series until Enterprise came. And again, it is a controversial opinion. It's similar to yours, but I actually love Enterprise. I think there were some poor episodes in Enterprise, but overall, it was a very well-meaning prequel. And I think it's unfortunate because it kind of gave them it's the writers of New Trek, it gave them something to really anchor to for their series. The prequel that will just anchor to that idea and just do a prequel. And again, a lot of the opinions you share, I'm actually surprised that we do share as many opinions as we do, because These Are the Voyages was atrocious. It was designed to be a love letter, according to Rick Berman, and he stated this publicly. He said, it's a love letter to fans, but it turned out to be quite the poison arrow. And you'd spent 4 years waiting for the birth of the Federation, only to be cut off just before Archer starts speaking. And what I didn't like is the fact that they made it, they sort of retconned it into the Pegasus episode, because that in itself was a superb episode. I really enjoyed the Pegasus. And again, coming from a younger sort of my younger years, having first watched that episode, it was like, the Enterprise has got a cloaking device, this is phenomenal. That level of enthusiasm sort of made it one of my favorite episodes. But I still like the episode now that I'm older and wiser, if that's one thing you can say. But These Are the Voyages really, to be honest, for me, completely ruined the entire experience of Enterprise until I decided to just cut that episode out completely, just remove it, because Terra Nova, I thought the speech that Archer gave at the end of Terra Nova was a good enough speech to probably just end the show, because that is the birth of the Federation. That is the starting point, the alliance, the Earth Alliance, whatever they call it. And then when the Enterprise got cancelled, I was devastated, because I thought that show deserved to keep going. It had just found its footing. It had just made its mark. And again, another controversial opinion is I love the opening theme to Enterprise, simply because it's so different.
I loved the first couple seasons opening theme. When they changed it to the upbeat rock version, I liked it less.
This is very true. I mean, it was sort of recorded, wasn't it, to try and say, okay, well, we'll try and make it a little cheerier instead of quite laid back. But I'm with you on that one. I preferred the laid back version. But when Enterprise finished, and I remember seeing, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I remember seeing there was a campaign to save Enterprise as a show, and it actually raised $2 million. And I cannot remember exactly who got involved in it, but either way, the campaign failed. And I went to a kind of like a mini Comic Con over here in Milton Keynes. This was about a decade ago, I think. And I actually spoke to Connor Trenier and Dominic Keating. I've met them both. And I did say to, I think it was Dominic Keating, I says, look, is there any chance of you all getting back together for, I don't know, a reunion or a season 5 of Enterprise? And he said no. I really sincerely doubt it, because it's all the politics that's involved in it. And because at that point, New Trek, aside from the 2009 J.J. Abrams Treks, the Discovery hadn't landed yet, and all that magosh afterwards. But he turned around and said no, because of the politics. And then you look a little bit further into it, and with Les Moonves and everything that happened behind the scenes, you understand why. You understand the politics side of it. He wanted Star Trek off the air because he hated it. But there was a few people I met there, certainly of Star Trek fame. I also had a conversation with Scott McDonald, which was absolute pleasure. He did it for nothing. I approached him and his signing desk, and I regret to this day I didn't actually get an autograph of him. I just talked his ear off for about 10 minutes. But yeah, all the obviously all the things that he's been in, all the show iterations of Star Trek, and all the many characters that he's played. I said to him the only person who rivals your stare is the guy who, I forget his name off the top of the song, Robert O'Reilly. I said that's the only person who matches your gaze is Gowron, because this is the eyes. And he goes, yeah. Some. I believe he said this. Don't quote me, but I believe he said he once had a staring competition with him, and he couldn't recall who won.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, it's when the J.J. Abrams Trek came out, I was really drawn to the trailer, the teaser trailer, because I thought, wow, that's a very, I've never seen that sort of attention given to Star Trek, and I've never seen that style given to Star Trek. And I went to see the film, and I generally enjoyed it as a a movie in the cinemas. It was an enjoyable experience. But then when I got to thinking about it, it sank in quality when Discovery came out, I decided to give it a go. The first season, there was a lot to get used to, a lot of change to get used to with Discovery, the Klingons, the spore drive was just absolutely inexplicable to me. I couldn't form any rational argument for the existence of the spore drive.
Yeah.
I just couldn't rationalize it. And when Picard came out, I remember putting it on my personal social media, the trailer, a link to the trailer, and saying, because the trailer was the draw, it's the hook that pulls you in. And I remember putting something along the lines of, and that's how you do it. This is better. This is looking forwards. It's not another prequel show. It's looking forwards. And when it came out, wow, I was so heartbroken. I started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Star Trek has gone in a very different direction, and like you say, Star Trek is about stories. It's not about surface level, shallow storytelling. It is it's often about the human condition and our faults and our strengths and what makes us human. And it never ever tells you how to think. I'm talking the Star Trek that's up there, those 5 captains. It never ever told you how to think, what to think. It just gave you the information, told its own story, and you could walk away from it knowing that you've now got to sort that out in your head, in your mind, where you would, did they make the right decision? And Voyager was great for that in some respects, and and DS9 as well. Some of the greater episodes. I always thought, although I didn't really think about it at the time, the episode of Voyager of Tuvix.
Mm-hmm.
Tuvix was something that I watched, and I didn't really think about it afterwards. I just went, well, that's a bit of a shame. He seemed like an interesting character. And then I started thinking about the larger implications of what Janeway had done. Two of her crew have been essentially lost. They are gone. And in their place, you have a new life form. So when she splits them back and destroys Tuvix, she's essentially violating the Starfleet ethical code, a human ethical code, and the Prime Directive, which is to seek out new life, not destroy it.
Yeah.
Because she wanted
and probably some medical rules as well. I'm sure
quite
the doctor
a few,
had.
Yeah. I believe some form of the Geneva Convention may have been violated. But no, the Voyager, to me, I really enjoyed it. Looking back on it, I see it as a tremendous wasted opportunity. Because the ship is always so clean. And that's where we got to the episode Equinox, the 2-parter, where that's pretty much, the Equinox represents what the Voyager should have looked like.
Yes. Yeah. The entire concept was done much better by Battlestar Galactica in, was it 03 or 04 when it came out? But my understanding was that after Deep Space Nine had been a serialized show, the people in charge of UPN, when they took on Voyager as their flagship series, they were like, yep, no, it's got to be episodic. So even though the entire story should have been serialized, like it should have been like we are lurching from one disaster to the next, barely staying alive, barely scraping enough dilithium together to warp out of this problematic situation. But yeah, far too often it was like seeing them on the Enterprise D, this nice clean ship, full resources, all the food they need, etc. And some of it they worked around, like they had Neelix preparing food most of the time instead of replicating it to save on energy. But very soon after season 1, that stopped really being an issue.
As well as the photon torpedo limited count that they had. We've got 37.
Or the infinite shuttlecraft. the shuttlecraft. Every episode they blow up a shuttlecraft, and there's still two in the bay waiting.
Yeah. Oh, it's uncanny, really, because I don't know whether you've seen any of the fan developed level designs for, say, for example, the Enterprise D. You see the main shuttle bay at the back, and it's its door is quite big, but then you see it to scale, and you see everything that they've designed. This shuttle bay could be massive with 100 shuttles in there. But Voyager, the shuttlecraft barely fit through the door, and to scale, you could probably just fit two. And they built the Delta Flyer, which was a bigger ship, but somehow it still fit through the door.
Yeah.
And speaking of Neelix, someone's put in the chat, wish Janeway just killed the Neelix part, to be honest.
Neelix was really annoying in the beginning. He was clearly like the comedy relief character. They fleshed him out better later in later seasons, and he wasn't as annoying. They made him more of a diplomat, somebody who could help them navigate their way through, and I didn't resent him as much. I was never a fan of Kess. I didn't mind seeing her go.
No,
she didn't. They wrote really interesting qualities about her species. They only lived to the age of 8. They're like marsupials or something. She had a pouch, didn't she?
It's like a sack on the back or something.
So they really didn't take advantage of those sorts of things, other than the episode before Year of Hell that starts with her as old in the future and going back through time, and she warns them. I can't remember what that one was called, but that was like the one time they investigated it, because the Doctor was trying to extend her life and it caused her to move backwards in time. And then I guess I don't know if there were issues with Jennifer Lien, or however you say her name, but they got rid of her and brought on Seven of Nine, and show was better for it. But...
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, as far as I'm aware, from what happened, again, I could be wrong, but it was a case of they needed to inject some fresh blood into the show. I think it's Jennifer Lane. She unfortunately, after Voyager, her personal life took a nosedive. And she is in and out of psychiatric care, and she's been arrested and charged with,
there's some indecent exposure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember those.
Yeah, and the character of Kess was she was timid. And I didn't think she was a strong character. And when Seven of Nine came in, that's exactly what the show needed. It was in some ways, it was kind of like, if you've ever seen Buffy, it was kind of like a Cordelia character. They needed someone who was straight talking, who was kind of like the android of the series, learning how to regain her humanity. But she was also very blunt. And I mean, my wife is as blunt as they come. I love that aspect of her. I've always liked just straight talking people who will call a spoon. And Seven of Nine to me is that.
And the role that she was able to fulfill there that Kess and Neelix couldn't is that Kess and Neelix came from less developed technologically cultures. They joined Voyager. Voyager's like a freaking magical heaven box in space that just produces water on demand and everything that they don't have. It's hard for them to be critical of humans or the Federation when you come from less and see their riches and their standard of living. Versus Seven of Nine now, who comes from the perfection of the Borg and can stand there and be like, you guys are so inefficient, you're constantly arguing, you all have your own voices. She can criticize because she comes from enough of a technologically advanced and different culture that she can make those statements and do so confidently.
I never really thought about it that way, the contrast between Kess and Seven. That's an interesting point. Because like you say, the Borg are superior in many ways. Well, we sort of subjectively call them inferior because they've got no individuality, but they call that their strength. They say, you know, individuality is a weakness. We work as a hive mind, and we basically get more done. But I'd never sort of looked at it from that particular perspective.
Yeah, and with the Voyager episode Unity, which happened before Year of Hell, where they find the Borg colony, the former Borg colony from the derelict Borg at the edge of the Necrit Expanse.
Yeah.
That was a great episode too, because you got to one. My favorite scene is when they're healing Chakotay, because you hear their individual voices at first when they're talking to him through the neural link, and then eventually their voices become the Borg. Yes. As they're speaking to him, and you hear that, and that's like a really chilling moment in that episode, because you hear their individual voices, you hear the individual tones, and then it all becomes that flat affectation of the Borg, and but they're not the bad guys.
No.
And they help Chakotay, and yes, they reestablish their neural link on the planet to become the cooperative, but they don't act like Borg. They release Chakotay and they blow up the Borg cube that starts turning back on again. But there is that moral dilemma as to whether or not that was the right thing to happen. Like, they've now given these people the power of the Borg. And, you know, and that's a great episode that doesn't answer the question and leaves it up again to the viewer. But it shows like a positive aspect to the Borg at a time when, you know, the Borg are just this evil, unrelenting force, like a storm on the horizon that you can do nothing about. And yeah, it definitely gave them a lot more nuance, and it allowed Seven of Nine. It gave her that ability to be critical, instead of just grateful that her individuality has been restored.
Yeah. But, well, she was so used to, she's a Borg since she was a child, so she's not really known much different. And certainly at the beginning, she was very sort of drone-like, and she was almost childlike in some ways. But Unity was it was an interesting episode, but it was covered in Descent Part 1 and 2 of The Next Generation, in that sense of a separate Borg collective. But you look at quality of the episode of Unity, you know, called Unity, and the Next Generation episode Descent, and then you see what they did with Picard Season 2 and Dr. Jurati. I hate Jurati. You see what they did with the Borg there, and it's a very similar thing that they've done. It's a separate collective, but the quality of, for example, Unity, the quality of writing, the story structure, the way it made you think, the way it made you feel. You compare it to Star Trek Picard, the final episode of Season 2, and they are miles apart in quality, and that's something that New Trek just doesn't get right, in my opinion. New Trek is it's honestly like a child's writing it.
Yeah, it's there's not a lot of nuance to it. They don't present both sides of arguments. Not that every episode has to present both sides. You can have objectively bad people who are doing bad things, but normally you still learn their motivations. Lately in New Trek, the motivation seems to be somebody in the Federation hurt me, so I'm going to destroy the Federation.
Absolutely, yeah. And Vadik is a perfect example of that. It's meh. I've been hurt by the Federation. Federation bad. I'm going to do something nasty to the Federation. And it to be fair, it's playground writing. It's playground mentality. They hurt me, so I'm going to hurt them back. And in some ways, if you think about First Contact, for example, you mentioned First Contact earlier. By the way, I loved it as an action film, but it was more Star Trek than what came after. But you know, you've got Lily Sloan giving Picard exactly the same speech, you know. So the Borg hurt you, and you're going to hurt them back. How is that enlightened? That's simple revenge, and he comes to realise that. But the villains in New Trek are usually just extremely one-dimensional, and they don't work.
It's like the writers watched First Contact and was like, oh, he got hurt, so he hurt them. We're going to do that with everyone, and not pick up on the fact that that was not the way he should be, and that, you know, Lily's speech made him realize that was the wrong way to be. And
I think I've said in one of my videos, it's essentially they capture a point, and before the point is finished, they go, pause, write that down. That needs to go down.
Yes.
But you missed the point. I don't care. That is good. We'll use that, you know.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I had something and then I lost my train of thought. So
that happens to me all the time. All the time. I don't even know what we're streaming about right now. No, it's why it can take about 10 takes for me to get my video right, because quite often I'll start ranting about the episode. And I'm not making my point as clearly as I want to, so I'll just stop the recording and start again. But I'll end up missing loads that I filmed previously. So I'm exactly the same.
I know what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm actually amazed I've been this coherent for this long, because normally I need to write scripts and polish them and then read them in order to speak fluidly without uhing and umming and liking through everything I'm saying. Oh my goodness.
We're having a bit of a moment here. Just bear with me. There we go. Should be back now.
The movie. Whose title escapes me. It's not Into Darkness. It's the second one. The third Abrams movie.
Beyond. I think it was called Beyond. Yes, that's right.
The villain has the same thing. He's like, I got hurt, so I'm going to destroy the Federation. And he was like a... and what's worse is that that ship, whichever ship it was that crashed on that planet, because I've seen the movie maybe twice, and they're not memorable enough yet for me to remember. But they were they were an Enterprise era ship, which means they would have existed in the Prime timeline, and those events would have happened in the Prime timeline, but you never hear about it. Even though this is the Kelvin timeline, that ship crashed and got stranded there, and everything happened to that crew before the Kelvin timeline split. Yeah,
that tracks, actually. That does track. That's bizarre. Again, it's something I'd never really considered. That was a very peculiar film. I understand why it did so badly, because it was the definition of you know, pointy pew pew Star Trek, and it just proved to me that they don't really have an original thought. Into Darkness did that with me in some respects, because it was, well, let's just rewrite the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and luckily for me, when new Star Trek stuff is coming out, I try not to watch a lot of trailers or read a lot of early reviews or anything, because I want to be surprised. So I did not know that was Khan when I watched the movie. I did not know what to expect and what to happen, and then I realized that, oh, it's the Wrath of Khan.
That must have been unfortunate to go in unprepared. Sorry.
Yeah. So the surprise, like, it was a genuine twist for me, because I didn't know that Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be Khan, and then as soon as I realized that, I'm like, oh, they're redoing the movie. And that's not very, original or interesting.
Well, to me, it's the remake syndrome. See, I know for a fact that I don't have a creative bone in my body. Now, I say that having, being a hobby artist, okay, so I'm able to draw, I'm able to do that sort of thing, and I can create videos and I can create reviews, I can create addendums and all of that stuff. But doing something that's purely from the imagination, I'm not actually able to do. I've not exercised that creativity enough. So that's where I tend to put the writers of New Trek in general, these writers that are coming through, and it's not just Star Trek. It's disseminating across various different franchises now. There's no imagination, there's no creation anymore. It is simply, well, that worked, let's do that, or I think we can make that better. So there's hubris involved as well. We can take the Wrath of Khan, arguably one of the best Star Trek movies ever made, and we can remake it and people will absolutely love it. And then when people don't love it, well, to be fair, that's when they get a little bit more than a little bit miffed with people.
Yes. I got a question for you. Say you're not creative, but Picard season 2, assuming you had the same premise going into the first episode was fixed in stone, what would you have done differently to make that season better? How could you have changed that story? Because that story was just a mess. It was such a...
Well, I'd have to, if I was to take my own desires out of it, I would probably. I'm just trying to think back to the episode. So, it's everything seems to be okay. Picard's now a respected admiral again. He's, he's not berated every single chance people get. This stupid old man. When he's turning to random Romulans who want to kill him, he's turning to them and saying, "I'm so very, very sorry that I didn't save your planet from the ridiculous supernova that would have threatened the entire galaxy, even though the writers don't actually know that supernovas don't do that immediately." That sort. If he was respected, he was, and this is why I got so excited for the first episode. I was actually like, this is much better, and I believe Q popped in at the end. Honestly, I would probably have. I would have approached it as another one of Q's lessons. Now, the season tried to do that, and it ended up really messing up on what the lesson actually was. Because by the end of the season, you're thinking, what was Q's point? I don't understand the why Q did that. And then they did a lousy job of telling us which Q we were actually looking at. Was it the Q that had already gone back to the past, or was it the Q that had come back to the future and got Picard back in time? And it was just such a mess. Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have made season 2. If the first episode was set in stone, I would have probably had Q say that this timeline, the one that you're in now, is the mess. Snap his fingers and have it be a decision that was made in Picard season 1, or just before Picard season 1. There was some kind of decision that Picard made, maybe around the whole Romulan Star incident. There was something that set off this chain of events that created this skewed alternate timeline, not only in the past but in the future as well, and said, look, this is a big problem. You've created this, and you sort of pay a respectful, as respectful as New Trek can be, of course, homage to All Good Things, because that's what he did in All Good Things. So he'd snap his fingers and he'd say, this is actually how it should all be, but because you've made one decision wrong, or you've made a decision that's affected everything around the Romulan star. Star Trek Picard season 1 is the dystopia. It's what you have brought upon yourself. And I'd probably work it so you could correct Star Trek in a way. There's a little bit of bias there because we both hate New Trek and whatnot, and we want to fix it. We want there to be just a snap. I've said in my previous videos, I just love for Q to say, because I believe he says at the end of the first episode, well, welcome to the road not taken. And my whole point was, why wouldn't you just have Q coming to fix it? And and at the end of the season, the only way, because Picard can't fix it, he asks Q for help at the end of the season, and Q makes the ultimate sacrifice. It takes everything he is and it ends up destroying him, getting the timeline back to where we were. And then you could still have season 3 with Metalis and you could do a better job for sure, but you could run season 3 straight off the back of season 2. There could have been a lot of interesting stories. But that was a really good question. That actually challenged me, so well done.
Nice.
I'd like to pose the same question to you, though. I'd like to hear what you would do.
See, and that's loaded. It was a loaded question for me because when I wanted to start creating YouTube videos as a reviewer, I wanted to start with a video called "How I Would Have Done It" or "How I Would Have Made It Better."
Yeah.
And so I had given a lot of thought to season 2, and I kind of like, let's say the initial premise, like I don't like Raffi, I don't like the elf guy. Elrond.
Elnor, yeah. They couldn't have gotten that any closer, could they? That was
I know.
It was change one letter.
You should have called him Regulus or something.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, suppose that situation, it's the alternate timeline that gets set back to 2024. I'm like, there were so many things. Even if you accepted like the nonsense about Picard's ancestor that they had to go fix in Los Angeles, they missed so many opportunities just for way better writing. Like there was the part early on where Girardi and the Borg Queen were connected, and at one point their personalities switched bodies before Picard disconnected them, and then you find out that the Borg Queen hitched a ride in Girardi. It would have made much better story if Picard pulled the plug while they were switched. So Girardi's in the Borg Queen torso, and the Borg Queen is now stuck in Girardi's body. So the Borg Queen is no longer a threat, and she has to, she's stuck in this limited body. Maybe they drag her along anyway to try and get her to help. She's trying to like make Borg nanoprobes out of iPhones, but can't because our tech is garbage.
No, she hasn't had enough batteries for dinner.
Yes. And Girardi, meanwhile, she'd be in the Borg Queen and be like, yeah, I can fix the ship because I'm plugged in and everything. But the power that she experiences, if you ever played Portal?
Once, yeah.
Portal?
Yeah.
Portal 2, when Wheatley gets plugged in to the controlling module, he gets hits from the power of just having all this power, and then becomes the villain, even though he started out as presumably a good guy. I see that with Girardi. She would start finding new powers as the Borg and doing stuff. And then you've got the corpse of Elnor there. She would resurrect him as a drone. Nice. And then once they resolve whatever nonsense they had to resolve in LA and come back, they now have to fight their own beloved Elnor that everybody loves except the audience, and Girardi, and there'd have to be a point where the Borg Queen has to, get in control so that they could return home, and like just that alone, the fact that they didn't do that mind swap, that would have, like they did stuff where the Borg Queen took over Girardi eventually, so the actress got to play both roles, but just doing that where the Borg Queen had to be Alice and Alice had to be the Borg Queen would have been much more interesting, I I think from a plot standpoint, having them to fight Elnor as now a Borg would have been interesting. And like he just spent that entire season a corpse,
Yeah.
until his little cameo at the end. Like they use the corpse, like do something with it. Like it felt very Chekhov's gunny. Like they showed it there. You expect them to use it, just like Lieutenant Duquesne from the Voyager episode Relativity.
Ah, yes.
They brought the actor back as the FBI agent, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a reference to Voyager. He's going to be from Relativity. He's going to be wondering why the timeline's all messed up. And he's like, no, I'm just Fox Mulder, and I'm gone after 2 episodes.
Yeah, and that's, I think it was his name was Jay Carnes, wasn't it? And he, I honestly, there was part of me that was hoping that he would be Duquesne, but the realization, beg your pardon, that this is New Trek and it's not that clever. They brought in the actor, they didn't bring in the character, and that wouldn't have been really something special for him to, you know, to be interviewing Picard and saying, look, and he'll turn at the end of his scenes and just say, look, you're not supposed to be here. I'm Duquesne from Relativity and all of that. And that would so much more interesting. But
yeah, or that he was stranded there because they messed up the future. Like he was on assignment and stranded.
Kind of like Braxton. Yeah, exactly what happened to Braxton. He was stranded. It wouldn't have been terribly original, but it would have still been infinitely better than what they did. Picard season 2 was just horrendous.
Yeah, I don't, and I almost feel like they were. The first episode was teasing the idea that the Borg Queen might be his mother, Picard's mother.
Yeah.
And then I think the backlash, I think they shoehorned Girardi as the Queen at the end because it just felt like it was like Girardi ex machina. Like she just all of a sudden went, oh, and now she's the Borg Queen. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the writing felt so all over the place. It felt like they were just changing the scripts constantly. I don't know. I didn't like the LA 2024 entire season. It's okay to do that for an episode. Like Voyager did it for the 2-parter. God, I can't even remember where the Doctor gets his mobile emitter. Where Braxton, Future's End.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that, but when you do an entire season like that, that's just like, that sounds like cheapness to me. It's like, oh, they just happen to need to be at the place where our studio is, in the year that we are in right now. Like,
the LA scenes frustrated me, and the whole Rene Picard thing frustrated me greatly, because
they didn't tie in the Bell riots either.
No,
like
they didn't.
They went to 2024, and I'm like, okay, we're going to get a nod. Maybe we'll get like a news clip showing Benjamin Sisko.
Oh, wouldn't that have been something special? Yeah, absolutely. No, nothing like that. They got it so wrong. But what I find frustrating is they'll find a way to utilize the cast in any way that they want, and Star Trek's always done that to a degree, but the character, the not Laris character, really got to me, because you want to bring the actress in, you want her to make a part of the cast, but it was also on the nose, because she was this watcher, one of Will Wheaton's gang, Will Wheaton, one of his gang, Will Wheaton, and she was watching over Rene Picard, and she actually was Laris's ancestor, and it's made clear. You see the earpiece she was wearing. It's just in the shape of a Romulan ear, just because someone thought, well, your camera's gone blurry.
Oh,
you have blurred.
Yeah, my soul has left my body.
There you go.
If I can make it. Still, no,
You're not quite high
uh,
definition yet.
not quite.
Yeah.
Ugh, stupid thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's focusing on, but I'm in a black background. I should be the only lit thing in the scene, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's
decided to
true.
focus on something else.
No,
Yeah,
it was
there we go.
it frustrated me because it didn't make any sense. I was
You know how it makes sense? They already had a contract for that actress
yeah
and needed a role to fill,
yeah
and didn't want
that's
to
where it is.
hire anybody else. The
No, that's
Guinan
so true.
stuff was nonsensical.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Guinan not remembering encountering Picard in the 1800s in Time Zero. Uh,
Oh boy, yeah,
I wish they had used the character who played young Guinan in the episode Rascals from TNG, because she
yeah,
would have been an adult about the right age, and about what Whoopi's age would have been back when those episodes are filmed. You know, she was also the same person who played the young version of Whoopi's character in Sister Act.
yeah.
They reused that actress, so that would have been a cool thing. But they just had this other actress who was a very angry Guinan and didn't remember Picard and could
Shotgun guy.
summon cues somehow, like
Oh,
genies.
oh boy. Oh, it's all coming back to me now. Oh, that's horrible. No, that was horrible. Um, it was the astral projection that got me as well. The astral projection, where she's standing there going, "Can you
Oh,
hear me? Can you hear me?" You know, and I just fell off my chair laughing when I saw that. I couldn't believe that was
uh,
what was happening, and there was never any indication that Elorians could astral project. There was never
yeah.
any indication. There was never any indication that they were telepathic in that sense. They were very much, I would say, just instinctively switched on. They knew
Hmm.
things. They were deep feelers. They were empaths, not telepaths.
Yeah.
Um, and for them to, they retconned so much with Guinan. It was just, it was so funny, and it was but how it tied in with her, with not Laris, the Watcher, where she takes Picard to the meeting point, and you got all these people whose eyes go in the back of their head, and they're saying, make sure you're unarmed. They just need to make sure you're unarmed, and come this way, come that way. She can clearly control people, but by the next episode, that ability just gone.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been handy when they had all those military Borg shooting at them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. The stormtrooper Borg. They can't hit anything.
yeah. And they all have laser pointers on their guns, so you still get that Borg laser pointer effect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And 709 and Super Raffi can annihilate them with a single charge in a grapevine.
There's so, oh god, that's the, and this is like something I'll say about New Trek. I can go back to TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise. I can list you episodes that I've watched many times, and ones that I could go back and watch right now and be happy to watch. I have not rewatched a single episode of Picard. I have not rewatched a single episode of Discovery. They're they're not something where it's like, oh, I need a feel good episode of something, you know.
Mm.
I'm not going to put on Discovery. I'll put on Darmok from
Yes.
TNG, or I'll put on Future Tense from Enterprise, which I liked, or uh, dozens of dozens of or several or TNG episodes I can think of. But New Trek just doesn't move me that way. I don't want to go back and watch it. And so yeah, it's now like when we're talking about it, and it sounds like you haven't rewatched much of it either, because it's like, oh yeah, remember when we were really angry that they did that?
Yeah, yeah.
Because,
No, it's got the rewatchability of zero to me. I'm not. Discovery was the first season in retrospect. the first season actually, I got so badly slated for saying this on one of my videos, but it wasn't actually that bad if you've got it next to what came after the next 3 seasons. It was certainly the best season, even though it was shockingly bad. It was the best of the 3. And Picard, I think this new season, and I've been thinking about it today, thinking, look, I've been saying, because I give my reactions to my videos as soon as I've seen the episode. You're getting my thoughts on the episode as I'm having them. But with season 3 of Picard, it's got a little bit of extra help simply because season 2 was so terrible. We can say, well, this is better, and because it's better, we enjoy it more. So you get sort of getting a false feeling on what you're actually feeling towards the episode, but towards the season, because it's so radically different than season 2. But even season 3 is poorly written, and this is what people are. I'm guilty of it because I do my videos and I'm like, oh, that was a pretty good episode because I saw this, because I saw that. And that's the point I made in one of my later videos, is that you can get, and I think this is what they're doing, you can get so caught up in seeing things that made you feel good, is that dopamine hit. You can get so caught up in it that you're not actually noticing that the writing is not that good. And when you've got YouTubers who have binged watched all 10 episodes because they've got early access, they're coming off one massively snowballed dopamine hit, and they're convinced. And I'm not saying they're wrong in what they're thinking, but I think it had a massive effect on them because they're still coming off this massive hit of member berries. They've drank too much of the member berry juice. That they're not actually, although they I don't want to say cop out, they sort of say, well, it's got its problems, but it's actually very good. We all say that because there's a little get out there where we can say, okay, yeah, but I did say it's got its problems. But they have said that it's good, and Robert Meyer Burnett has said that it's good. He enjoyed it and he rewatched it. Now, I've rewatched the first episode, Clayton, and I've got to tell you, it's not as impressive as I remember it being. And I think that's I'm almost hesitant to go and rewatch the second episode and the third episode. I think I said I'd watch it with the wife and film it because it would be quite interesting to see someone who's outside of the franchise, commentate on it. But for sure. I don't. Yeah, exactly, fresh air. But I don't think season 3. I think it does not actually have a strong original story. It's not telling an original story. Yes, there's a bit of love there for the franchise. Clearly, that's self-evident. But it's not actually wowing me as much as it did very early on.
While you were talking about it, it occurred to me something that has been kind of just in the back of my mind about this season has been Shaw, played by Todd Stashwick.
Yeah.
He's a character actor. I've seen him in like every TV show ever made. He's always the bad guy.
As my wife would say, "Oh yes, so he's a wanker."
Yeah. But I feel like he's the stand-in for the critics of the first 2 seasons of Picard. Yes. Because all he does is complain and point out previous season plot holes. Oh, hello, Picard. Oh, no, not Picard. The positronic copy of Picard. And, they're not she's the Borg, not that nonsense that happened last season, but the real threat that is the Borg. And then what do they do to him? They beat the crap out of him, and he just stands there meekly by while crew members get
I know. It surprised me so much because he's acted like the badass that we expect him to be, and he is a badass. He genuinely doesn't care. If anything, he's as blunt as my wife. And And he says it how it is. And then he's just become this quiet voice in the background that says very little, or just comments and goes, "Oh, all right, that's what you're doing. Okay, get on with it then." And I'm thinking, well, you had such potential there with Shaw, and who he is, the cynical ass that he is. You've got such potential to really have him not have he, like you say, have him be the outside observer of what's actually going on. But so many things haven't made sense since I've stopped. I've stopped each week and thought, hang on a minute, I've got to revisit this, because why does Will Riker, who has spent the previous 3 episodes and an entire season having nothing but respect for Picard, suddenly, when Picard's made his point of, we have to get out of here, we've got to fight our way out, does Riker then, when it all goes horribly wrong, Riker's given the order that Picard is suggesting, then turn around to Picard and say, you've just killed us all, get off my bridge? And Picard goes, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll go. Where did that come from? That surprised the hell out of me. I was not expecting that, because I it could have been done with just a look of, well, that messed everything up. But
you watch TNG, all the different times that they've gone through near-death experiences, the ship in peril, that they get out by the skin of their teeth, and then like, oh no, we're sinking, and it's, oh well, okay, we're all gonna die. I'm like, really?
we must accept the inevitable simply because the script is telling us there's no way out. But as soon as
you're right, like, sorry.
So go on.
No, you're right about like the poor writing and the dopamine hits make you feel good about the episode. Like when they were at the Fleet Museum, and 7 of 9 is scrolling through all the ships that are there, and there's the Voyager, and you hear the Voyager music in the background, and you feel good, and you see the Defiant with the Deep Space Nine music in the background, you feel good. And then like a couple episodes after, I was watching the credits, because I don't always watch the credits, but they're interesting, and I was watching through, and they showed pics from the Fleet Museum again, and I thought about it, and I'm like, Voyager and Defiant were built 30 years ago. Why are they mothballed? Why aren't they still in active service? Because unless they're just cranking out new ships every year and they can put the old ones out to pasture. Like
I thought about this, because 30 years is a long time. There are still military vessels on the ocean that are still commissioned, but there comes a time when you've got to put a ship to bed. You can't actually modernise it anymore. It's just the shell is too old. But if I can see it to one degree, because Voyager went through 7 years of somewhat tame wear and tear. It would have been a different. It would have reinforced it if it was to the quality of the Equinox, or the condition of the Equinox was in. But if the Voyager had 7 years in another quadrant, personally, when what I would have done, it was decommission the ship anyway as soon as it came back. Not only because you want that museum piece of it's an absolute media. How would you put it? It's media feed. It's a story. If it was a capitalist society, it would be a gold mine. You could turn Voyager into an absolute gold mine, but you'd mothball the ship for the simple fact of what they do with cars that are I believe Top Gear. If you've ever seen Top Gear in this country, the star in the reasonably priced car. What they do is they get a celebrity, and they'll race around. They'll get them to race a reasonably priced car. It's not a sports car; it's just a road car, and they'll race it around the track. And when the car's done sort of 4 or 5 seasons, what they'll do essentially, because they can't resell it, they can't second-hand sell it because it's been through the mill, and they can't guarantee the car will be safe. They have to write it off or destroy it in some big fashion. So I sort of do understand why Voyager would be mothballed after its run. But the Sao Paulo, later renamed the Defiant, okay, yeah, it's been through one pretty bad dogfight that we've seen. And if you were to go by what the writers of Deep Space Nine, I think if you've seen the documentary on Deep Space Nine, What We Left Behind.
What You Leave Behind?
Yeah.
Or What We Left Behind? Yes. Excellent.
That ship's actually destroyed in their written plan for the next season and what they became. But I get that, and I do understand why they decommission ships, but there's no explanation as to what happened to the Enterprise E, at least not yet. But apparently there's the Enterprise F, and I'm thinking if you wanted to do a real sort of fill in the gaps story, and really, what do you call it, an epilogue or a prologue, but it would be both, I would say, then you could probably answer a lot of questions through very limited exposition about what happened to these ships and what happened to the crews. And okay, yes, we get a cameo by Tuvok, great, or should I say Tuvok, because I couldn't. Don't get me started on the ears.
I guess Vulcan ears just keep growing as you get older.
maybe it
grow out. And
maybe it's an appendage sag. You know,
Yeah.
they just go. Oh, the older they get,
Gravity.
before you know it, they look like a squirrel.
Yeah.
But no, you've got all these little cameos, and they do nothing to really explain what's happened over the course of the last 30 years. Only that apparently the Romulan star blew up for whatever reason. You know, I mean, I'm going to digress a little, ever so slightly. There's no science in New Trek.
Oh, no.
There's no science in New Trek. You know, Discovery with the 7 red signals, all simultaneously received at the same time from different points in the galaxy. They all appear at different points in the galaxy, and all at the same time.
Yep.
It doesn't. Space doesn't work that way.
Nope.
Now I know warp drive's not a thing yet. We're not quite there with warp drive, but you can't deny the laws of physics. That Star Trek has always explained stuff away. Okay, yeah, it can be disproved because they're just scientific theories. But the ship doesn't actually, although the ship travels faster than light, it doesn't actually travel faster than light. In terms of being propelled by its own force, it creates a warp bubble, which then it's essentially surfs space, and that's how it gets around it. And but you can't change the speed of light. 7 red signals coming from different places would appear at different times, and it would take hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of years for those signals to be received.
Yes. Utter nonsense.
yeah, absolutely. And there's no. What I enjoyed about certain Star Trek episodes was they always took into account how long it would take someone to get somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, when O'Brien goes away on holiday with his wife, there's the journey is going to take a couple of months or a month to get that far, or it's going to if the Defiant goes back to Earth, it's going to take a few weeks to get there, because Deep Space Nine is known as Deep Space Nine because it's in deep space. It's far away, so there's things that you can fill in, and that's where Enterprise did very well. I know I'm digressing from point to point, but Enterprise did that very well. It took them 3 episodes to get to Risa.
Yes.
So we were going to a vacation planet. It's going to take a while to get there, and then they had stories on the way. But Picard, it's worse. Say it's worse in Discovery and Picard, in the sense that, in the first episode of this season, and it didn't occur to me when I watched it. It was after I watched it and I was doing my review, and holy crap, how did they get there? They go from Earth, where they receive the signal, to the edge of Federation space in an instant. It's like, oh yeah, we're there. Or they go to bed for one night and they wake up and they're on the other side of Federation space. I'm thinking, well, there's no way that would happen. So
I mean, even like how they handled that in like TNG is they'd have the little bit of voiceover with an exterior shot of the ship being like, "Captain's log. It's been 3 weeks since we left Earth, and now we finally reached blah." And they don't even bother doing that. And maybe they just think we're dumb, or they don't need to do that, or they've got too many other things to pack in there. I don't know. When you're talking about Discovery and the red signals, it made me think about the next season where they go 900 years in the future. I don't know if you were ever aware of this, but after Enterprise ended a few years, floating around the internet, there was a kind of a spec script or spec synopsis for a new Star Trek series set in the future. And it's been forever since I've read it, so I'll have to go by memory. And if people are familiar with it who are watching, forgive me if I get details wrong. But it's set quite some time in the future, 500, maybe 1,000 years. And the Federation has just become big and bloated, and they don't really do exploring anymore. It's all just about maintaining the infrastructure. There's groups that are looking to break away from the Federation. Like, it's just a shell of its former self. And then some new threat appears, and they have to actually put together a crew of people on a ship to go investigate it and figure it out. And they have to start being regaining that TNG era level of interest and exploration and stuff. And when they did this Discovery in the future and the Federation is in shambles, it reminded me of that script that was floating around on the internet 15 years ago or 20 years ago.
I did recall hearing something about that, because I mean, it would have been an interesting idea if executed correctly, but they really didn't. And I'll be honest, I got to about halfway through season 2 of Discovery, and I had to stop. Because I just couldn't bear it anymore. It was so insanely dull. But a few months later, once the episodes had compiled up and I was able to watch it in one, I decided just to go for it because that's where I think Picard season 1 is where I started doing videos, and this is where I decided to start doing reviews. So I decided to start doing weekly reviews, as of season 3 of Discovery. So I had to watch the rest of season 2. And the rest of season 2 was so painful to get through. It was incredibly painful. It was so disheartening. And then they got catapulted 900 years in the future. I'm thinking, well, this is a chance for them to really start messing with the Star Trek universe, because they can do whatever they want now. And when season 3 came out, and it was the bleak dystopian future, and there was this burn. There was the burn. Everyone thought Michael Burnham would be the key to everything, because it was going to be the Michael Byrne. But
yes,
but it was the burn where again, an absolute unknown, useless back character had a hissy fit and blew up the warp core of every Starfleet ship that had them switched on. Every ship in the quadrant, all the dilithium ignited at once. Because Starfleet, or the Federation, is split up and isolated off. No one can travel at warp because there's not enough dilithium, and that's how the Federation felt. Interesting story, interesting, story point, but really poorly executed. And
Oh, yeah.
and Michael Burnham has to be Space Jesus and bring them all back together.
Well, and of the thousands of species that Starfleet would have encountered, that they had encountered by the time of TNG, I think Data at one point said it was like 1,200 or 1,600 species, and the many more that they would have encountered by 900 years later. It just happens to be a ship of Kelpians, and the one Kelpian on Discovery is like the key to finding that emotional connection with that kid.
Yeah,
And it's why.
it was hard.
And I get it, like they do that in Voyager all the time. Voyager's on the other side of the galaxy, but hey, they stumble upon the colony of humans left behind from the 37s,
Yes.
or which Amelia Earhart and
Yeah.
Those folk, or they stumble upon the fake Starfleet headquarters at species
8472.
we're creating. Like, space is vast.
Mm-hmm.
And I know sometimes they're like, oh, we picked up what seemed like a Federation signal, so we went and investigated it. But like they found the truck floating in space in that 37th episode, and then Tom Paris turned on the radio and they picked up the SOS.
Do you know how infinitely small a truck is to a starship traveling at warp? It's like it would literally appear as a speck of dust.
Exactly.
But didn't
those sort of contrivances happen, but it just seems more forced now. Maybe because the writing is so poor.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you can forgive bad episodes, but when everything is bad, it's just,
Do you not find it endearing though? Do you not find it endearing with an episode like the 37s, where they wanted to tell this really wacky story, and to me it was endearing because and whenever Star Trek did this, old Trek, and I get this used against me all the time. Whenever Star Trek used to do this, tell a really wacky story that was really out there, or Amelia Earhart, in the Delta Quadrant, and Voyager just happens to be passing but near the signal and everything like that. This battery-powered radio signal from a plane. It was a cute story, but they had the license to do it, and I don't mean the physical license. I just mean a little bit of creative license to be able to say, you know what, we want to tell this story. Let's do it. They had enough goodwill from the fans for it to be, well, that was a piss poor episode, but I kind of liked it because it was a little dopey. Whereas New Trek, they haven't built that rapport with people. They haven't built that trust, that endearment. But people generally don't have positive feelings towards New Trek. So when they tell these ridiculous stories, it's a lot easier just to go, but that's absolutely stupid. That is ridiculous. On the episode of the 37s, there was a lot that was wrong with it. There was an awful lot. It's like Paris goes, now we're looking for something called a key. Where's the key? I'm fairly certain that a technologically advanced version of humans would know what a key is. Although a lot is electronic, you still know what a key was. And,
yes.
You'd know that when the fact that the truck started in the first place, it's been in the icy cold depths of space. Okay, yeah, fuel doesn't tend to freeze until it gets to a really cold temperature, but space is cold. and
yeah,
the amount of I'm generally sure that a truck like that would have rusted to the point of nothing. It would literally be a cloud of dust. Okay, yeah, it needs weathering to rust, but you're telling me...
Well, even UV radiation from the nearest star,
exactly.
And space radiation would destroy it. Yeah,
it would. And the fuel in the tank, I'm sorry, but the minute a micrometeorite hit that, the damn thing would just go up.
I'd have to say when the 37s aired, I was probably 18 or 19, and so like the concept was still cool to me. It's like, oh, they found a truck. There's humans on this planet, and then you try not to realize just how many times they've done this trope of aliens scooped up humans and dumped them someplace else,
Yeah.
which they do throughout Trek all the time. TNG, the last episode with Wesley, where he on the a planet with Native Americans.
Yes.
I can't, were they a colony or
They
were they
were a
moved by
colony. Yeah.
aliens? Oh,
Yeah.
they were a colony. Okay, forget them. Enterprise did it with Lone Star.
They did. I get a great episode. I did enjoy
Yeah.
that because it was a great episode. But no,
It was well written too, and the premise was well handled too.
Yeah.
Discovery even did it with the one episode during the Red Signals where they went to the planet with the church on it.
Yeah, that was one of the first.
They were
Pike
World War
episodes,
II humans.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
I mean, at the end
Once
of the day,
again, I only watched it once and I barely remember it.
yeah, a lot of it is me just going, oh yeah, oh yeah, they did that, didn't they?
Yeah.
No, they were able to get away with a lot of dopey stories, and every show had their version, or their not their version, but every show had their episode that was a little bit too eccentric.
Yeah.
One certainly with older Trek, the things that I enjoyed the most was to see the technology and what the technology of Star Trek could do. So it was always impressive to me when they did something a little bit different. You know, the first sort of inkling I got of this, having sort of gone into the Next Generation from about season 4 onwards, and then I retroactively watched the previous episodes, was cause and effect. The Kelsey Grammer episode with the loop, the repeating loop.
That's one of my feel-good ones that I'll watch over
and
over.
Yeah, even though everybody dies over and over again.
Yeah.
But it was the opening of the episode where the Enterprise has been destroyed, and it left me genuinely like, what's just happened? Why? What? Hang on a minute, what? And then when the credits finish, you see the opening, and you're like, yeah, and you are genuinely confused because you're thinking, do they know they've just destroyed the Enterprise before the credits, or what's going on?
Yeah.
And episodes like that, certainly, if you remember DS9's One Little Ship.
Yes.
With the runabout and the fact that they're compressed and they go flying through the Defiant. I don't know why. Story-wise is a bit daft, but I love that episode because you're seeing something that is very abstract, very different. You know, you're seeing a ship flying within a ship. And it was novel. And again, they were able to take a little bit of artistic license, a little bit of goodwill, and they were able to write this. Whereas nowadays, if Picard did that, or Strange New Worlds did that, it would end up being more of an insult. I have a feeling it would be taken that way.
Yeah. Well, I guess since the TNG era and TOS, we tend to expect more from our television series. Like we've had a lot of good television series. Battlestar Galactica, The Expanse. The Expanse was an amazing series from a writing perspective, even if it wasn't as fast paced, and it was really well thought out. The technology was well thought out, and the limitations of their technology, and they had good stories. And so if you're just gonna like crap out a 6th grade essay but put everybody in Starfleet uniforms and make callbacks to previous shows, like you're gonna end up with what we got now, which is not something you'd watch a second time.
What would you say if you were to just going to challenge you, if you were to pick out your 5 favorite episodes, one from each series of the ones that are up there, what would they be?
City on the Edge of Forever.
Mm-hmm.
I always like that one. TNG, probably. I really like Cause and Effect that you brought up, but Darmok is
Yeah.
one I would watch over and over, because it's just so different. Who's next on the list? Deep Space Nine. God, they had some pretty good episodes. There's one. It's a one shot episode, like a disconnected from everything. But the one, I can't remember the name of it. The Defiant comes across the colony of Defiant ancestors. Like the Defiant had gone back in time, crashed on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I know that episode was just kind of filler for the season. It didn't advance any story arcs, anything other than Odo and Kira's relationship. I think that's the only thing that got advanced in
Yeah.
that episode.
Yeah.
But I liked the premise. I liked the drama. I liked it when the Klingons showed up to help farm
Yeah.
before the end of day. Like it was a good story, and I like that one. And there's probably a ton of other Deep Space Nine episodes I'm forgetting. Certainly the one with Tony Todd playing Jake as an old man,
Oh
the
wow. Yeah.
visitor.
Yeah. The
Amazing.
visitor. Yeah. Yeah.
What I liked about that too is that it talked about events that hadn't happened yet, and then they played out. Like, oh, the Klingons took over the station, and then the Klingons try to take over the station. They don't succeed in the timeline with Cisco there,
Yeah.
but you get that really interesting. It's like watching one of the Simpsons episodes where they take place in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where they're getting it from.
Voyager, message in a bottle is one of my favorites. That's where they transmit the Doctor to the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah.
And the first one with Barclay, Pathfinder.
Yes. It's
is-
actually
is,
my
uh,
most
and-
watched episode. That is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that episode. Just because you like Barclay, you liked him from TNG.
Yeah.
You're rooting for him, and it seems to be the only person who's really passionate about getting in contact with Voyager, and he succeeds.
Yes.
When almost every episode with Voyager is, oh, are we going to make it? No, we're still stuck.
There's a
Or, no.
wormhole. It's this big.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Enterprise. I liked the pilot. Broken Bow is or Broken Bow. I don't know if
Bow, I
they
think
ever
it's
say it.
Broken
Bow.
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 I'm not
Bow.
sure.
It's in Indiana, so
We had
there's
very
not
nearly
lot
had
of boats
a
there.
little musical going on there.
Yeah. Future tense. And I haven't rewatched a lot from the later seasons from the Xindi arc. And part of it is because I lived alone and didn't have a television, so I'd download episodes during the first two seasons, and I'd just rewatch them while eating dinner or whatever. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the episodes of the first two seasons. So probably future tense. I liked that one where they find that mysterious time ship,
And there's absolutely no resolution. And it's a perfect mystery box that you're not going to be able to open.
Yeah, and they even they find the body, and it's like, could this be Zephyrin Cochrane, because he's missing, because they don't know yet what's happened to Zephyrin Cochrane, and that's a member berry, but it's kind of played well.
Yes.
It's not like, oh look, here's Zephyrin Cochrane, here's this picture, whatever. They just ask the question, and people in the know will be like, they said he set out on an experimental ship, maybe this is it, and that's all they mentioned. They didn't have to do anything else, and you still get that kind of continuity. And that was Enterprise. Was that all five? I think that's all five. Did I miss the series?
No, I don't think you did.
How about you? What's your top for the 5 series?
That's a tough one. I would have to say City on the Edge of Forever was very good from when I remember it. I've not actually rewatched the original series in 20 years. So the original series to me, I mean, we all remember the key ones, but I think this was where I struggled with Strange New Worlds, and in terms of reviewing it, I just kept getting everything wrong because I don't know enough about the original series. And it's something I really have been trying to kick myself to rewatch and to try and get more familiar with it. But that's where my Strange New Worlds videos were strange in themselves, because I simply just kept getting things wrong factually. I had to look a lot up. We'll put it that way. I had to read. I had to look into my encyclopedia of Star Trek, both versions. But they were very. There was some real standout episodes from the original series, but the Next Generation was where it really kicked into high gear for me. So the Next Generation has got just amazing episodes, and it's really hard to pick out just a favourite. But The Inner Light for me was a superb story, very well acted, very well written, very well structured, and Darmok, as you say, I think he's one of the best, definitely one of the best. But I'm also a fan of the final episode, All Good Things. I think that it was a perfect way to bookend the series. In terms of Deep Space Nine, The Visitor used to be my ultimate favourite because it was a story that got me tearing up every time I watched it, and it never fails to. I just get a little tear in my eye because I think it's such a moving episode. But if you go later on in the series, there's just some absolute corkers. There's
In the Pale Moonlight.
Oh, that's what I literally was about to say. In the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah, that's another episode that ends with, was this the right thing to do? Was it the wrong thing to do? And he ends on not concluding, but just saying, I have to accept this.
I have to live with it.
What I've done.
Yeah. And I think there was a get out of jail free card for him because it all worked out in the end. But you are left wondering, well, what would have happened if, if one thing hadn't gone right, or one thing, there was a little bit of contrivance there. There was a little bit of convenience, but it was perfectly well explained by it being Garrick who's instigated it.
Yeah.
Because Garrick's a mysterious character himself, and he's highly intelligent, and the way the outcome that Sisko wanted was the one that Garrick delivered, but Sisko didn't like the way it went, and it's something that he's going to have to live with. Fantastic episode. Definitely one of my favourites. What You Leave Behind, I didn't like. I thought it was and it wasn't. How do I put this? There were elements of it that I did like. I thought that it was overly cheesy with the flashback segment, but the ending itself was good for a lot of the characters, and it made sense just to make Sisko a god anyway, because it basically turn him into a prophet, because that's the way the series was going anyway. But I don't know. I didn't feel it was as good as All Good Things for a season ender. But Voyager, wow. There's a few. Coda, I thought, was very good in some respects. That was the Janeway death one. Was that Coda?
Oh, yeah, where the creature that was trying to take her soul or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a dad, wasn't it? Or it was.
Or somebody. Yeah.
One day you'll be in my Matrix. I think if I'm looking back, it's really hard to say, because I thought Tuvix was a great episode. I loved Tuvix. Again, one of those really sort of making you think episodes. But
I liked Scorpion. I loved the intro. You just cold open. There's like 6 Borg cubes given their "We are the Borg," and then you're like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" And then one of them just gets blown up, and you're like, "Oh my god."
This is clearly good. On that one, I will get back to my list very shortly. But on that episode, Scorpion was it Scorpion? I'm fairly certain it was Scorpion. The situation was back then is I was watching Voyager on BBC Two, and then we just got into season 3, which just started airing, and it was the old sort of 90s situation where we were very far behind what was actually being released over in the States. And over here we had a company called Sky, and they had Sky One. I don't know whether that's still going or what. It might still be going, but Sky One would always get the following season before the BBC. So I was always behind. We never had Sky. And then a friend of mine recorded some episodes off of Sky and says, "Oh, do you want these episodes of Voyager?" And I says, "Yeah, all right. I don't mind jumping ahead a little bit. You know, let's see where it goes." So for me, there was a real big gap there. I filled it in, but there was a real big jump in quality from season 3 to season 4, and it was around Scorpion, and then going all the way through to Year of Hell 2-parter, where Voyager just seemed to have increased its budget. After season 2, things really kicked into high gear. And it was always struck me as such a massive jump in quality. And then Scorpion came around, and I was, with 7 of 9 coming into it and everything, it was a real improvement. I thought I'd just digress onto that. But Scorpion was a good 2-parter. Equinox, again, leaving you with the moral questions. I think Dave Cullen did a video on Equinox, and his analysis of that episode was fantastic. It was a case of, whose side do you fall on? Do you fall on Janeway's side, who's got her principles, her morals, or do you stand on Rudy's side?
Ransom.
Rudy Ransom. Thank you. Stand on his side. He's got a crew to feed. He's trying to get through. He's got a little ship, and it's beaten. It's badly beaten. And he's just trying to get home. And he's doing everything that he can. And eventually, at some point, your morals take a real hit, especially when you're leading people in a dangerous situation. And it's all right for Janeway to sit there and, pass judgment on him because she's got the clean ship with the tidy bulkheads, which has a plot armor second to none.
Yeah.
Although it's been destroyed and damaged several times. And just digressing ever so slightly, because it occurs to me, you know the episode Deadlock from season 2?
Is that where the ship is split in two and
yes,
the Vidians are trying to get them?
Duplicated, yeah. Well, yeah. The twist there, as you know, is, for anyone who's watching who's not seen it, the twist is there's two Voyagers. The nice clean ships damaging the bad ship through some pulses that they're having to send, because both ships are using the same antimatter source, and the good ship gets destroyed, as in the clean ship, and the damaged one is the one that we're left with, and there's a bunch of other story points, so I won't digress too much into those, but the ship was battered, the bridge was destroyed, the condition of the ship that the ship is left in is horrendous. But it doesn't even take to the next episode before Janeway and Kim, who's not the actual Kim, he's a duplicate Kim, so Harry Kim died in the second season, they're walking through the ship, and you've got a few people just repairing some conduits, whereas the last scene we saw of Kim walking through the barrier, it looks like hell.
Yeah.
So Voyager got fixed very quickly, and it always ended up the next episode Voyager was immaculate again. They're in the Delta Quadrant. They don't have access to these to the facilities they need to fix the ship. Again, it was someone was put in the chat, Harry Kim should have stayed dead. He can't stay dead. He's got to get a promotion eventually.
Yep.
But I just found that funny. Equinox really touched on that. They can't repair the ship. They've lost a third of their crew, if not more, and they haven't had an easy ride. And what would it take for Janeway to have fallen into that pattern? So I would say Equinox is really high up there. And in terms of Enterprise, because I've got a real soft spot for Enterprise, I really do. To me, season 4 was the best season, except the end episode. The season 3 was a absolute close second. I loved season 3 when it came out, but I was frustrated and annoyed because I was having to watch it week by week. For a season-long story arc, you know, when the last episode of season 2 aired, and you see the Xindi attack, and you're thinking, holy shit, they've are they retconning it, or is this something that was never talked about? Obviously they retconned it slightly, but then the season closes with the Enterprise going into the Expanse. And the first episode of the 3rd season, I was expecting it to be wrapped up the way Star Trek wraps it up. You know, they always wrap up the 2-parter by, you know, the Enterprise going off. But they did it right because because Archer says, you know, we've been traveling for 3 months, and we've gotten there. So 3 months worth of stories in between have just been skipped over to get them to the Expanse. And I was expecting that to be over, but it ran for an entire series, which was very frustrating, but also very entertaining.
Yes.
Twilight was a good episode. You open with the destruction of Earth, and it's one of these what if episodes, you know, which I always enjoy the what ifs, but as long as everything's set right. Year of Hell, I loved the hell out of Year of Hell, because but the cop out was obviously everything got reset. But season 4 for me was a very strong season filled with some really good stories, and the way that they went about explaining certain aspects of or certain flaws of Star Trek, and I think you know where I'm going to go with this.
Oh yeah,
and it's that we do not discuss the past, or whatever Worf says.
We don't discuss it with outsiders.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't, and it was that explanation of what happens to the Klingons, which I thought was just immensely intelligent writing. It was really imaginative, because it had already gone off a feeder trio episode. It was a trilogy episode.
Yeah, it was a trilogy
with the augments, and they set it up perfectly. And the execution was perfect. The Klingons look the way they do because they tried to mess with augment DNA. And it turned into a mutagenic virus that spread across the Empire. But it didn't hit everybody. So there were some Klingons that looked like normal Klingons, but there were also Klingons that looked like humans. And it blew me away the way they went about explaining it, because it was the perfect way. I don't think anyone's actually been able to explain it any better than that.
Well, what was Roddenberry's famous quote, that the ones we saw in TOS were Northern Klingons and the ones in TNG are Southern Klingons?
Yeah, regional variations. Regional dialects.
Season 4 was amazing in Enterprise.
And that's why I took it really to heart when it got cancelled, because I thought, well, this is where it was just starting to get good. You know, I didn't really have much interest in the Romulan War and everything that would happen with that, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the most amount of 2 or 3 parters in one season of Star Trek I've ever seen. It was literally that's a 2-parter. In fact, I think there was wasn't there like 4 or 5 standalone episodes? Everything else was just a 2-parter or a 3-parter.
Enterprise being a prequel series, and after Voyager ended, I wanted more of post-Voyager era Trek.
Yeah.
But they came out with Enterprise, and they set it, whatever it is, 80 years before Kirk or 100 years before Kirk, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that made me a little disappointed. But at the same time, all of Trek up to that point had shown us the future of humanity. Mm-hmm. This is the humans, like, yes, we still individually have our own issues, but collectively, as a whole, humanity has evolved. Everybody on the Enterprise is the best of the best, and the aliens are the stand-ins for the current failings and foibles of humanity. You have the Ferengis to be our capitalism. You have
Yeah.
the very duplicitous Romulans and the militaristic Cardassians and the warrior Klingons, etc. And they stand in for those traits that you want to explore about people today. Enterprise, as a prequel, serves a purpose because what's been missing from the story is how we really get from us today to Picard in
Yeah.
TNG and the
Yeah.
people, and so these were us venturing out into space and stumbling to find our footing, to grow into the people that we all admire in TNG era Trek, and that kind of made it endearing to me as well. They were very rough around the edges humans. They were much more like us. They didn't know what they're doing. They thought every time they'd go to some place and be like, "We're from Earth," and they'd be like, "Never heard of it."
Where?
Because we were so insignificant.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah. We weren't a force
Um,
in the galaxy. We were the newcomers, the newbies. Um,
and then New Trek has kind of done away with that. They've just taken us, 21st century humans, slapped some spacesuits on us and thrown us into space. We've got, we're all drug addicts. We all curse. We all, um, uh, they don't seem like better people than we are. They aren't people I would aspire to be. I wouldn't aspire to be like Tilly or Burnham
but they
or
seem devolved. It's almost
any
they've
of the other
devolved.
characters that you can't remember their names because they weren't important enough to really never name them until Pike got on board.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and then the aliens, and the other thing too is that the aliens now, they're just humans with prosthetics.
Mm.
They like the Romulans in season 1 of Picard, the weird twincest or incest kids that they
Oh
had
yeah,
going on
those.
there.
Thanks for
Um,
reminding me about that.
but I mean, like there wasn't anything particularly Romulan about them. They were just crappy 21st century humans with pointy ears,
Yeah.
and you kind of, the aliens no longer are standing in for traits. Everybody's just the same. So you can't tell a good story when everybody is exactly the same.
Mm.
I don't know. I felt that a lot. Like, you don't have Vulcans there, commenting on the illogical things that humans are doing, or anything like that. It's everybody's exactly the same. Everybody's experiencing things the same and feeling things the same, and
Yeah, I mean, everybody's. It's all sort of uniform crap. It's all people self-aggrandizing, and pretty much there's no chance for any growth. It's like you and I having a robotic conversation. Now, we were saying before the stream, we like a conversation that flows and bounces back from one to another, and you build a picture of what's going on. The later Star Treks, the latest new Treks, all seem so heavily scripted, almost like they are patting themselves on the back. Every human being is patting themselves on the back, saying, "I'm brilliant, I'm involved, I'm this, I'm that," rather than like you say, the aliens' viewpoint, or the aliens' view of humanity and what humanity is. And I agree with you in terms of Enterprise. What it was, you know, us going out into the galaxy, and we're the judgmental ones. We're judging other cultures.
yeah.
We're judging the Cretaceans and the daft way that they do things, and the fact that they get so easily insulted because people eat in front of other people. Trip. I think Trip is the bridge between Archer and us, because if Archer is okay, yeah, he's the most he's the closest in the series to what we have to Kirk, for example. You've got varying sort of stages of development there, and you've got the crew all have their own viewpoints and their own particular ways of seeing things. Trip is pretty much the hick. He's the hick of
Yeah.
the show. He's the one that sees you know, a woman's apparently suffocating a child, but he doesn't understand, so he's judging her, saying, "Hey, you know, pack that in. What are you doing? What are you doing to your boy?
Yeah.
Looks like he's being tortured or whatnot. It could be alien waterboarding for all he knows, but he's told to just stop." And Trip's the biggest interferer. You know, he's the biggest
Oh
person
yeah.
who just assumes something. You know.
Well, even Archer, a night in sick bay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like the expectation that, well, it's a planet, I should be able to take my dog there, and my dog should be able to pee on stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, what are you thinking? That you're just making assumptions. You're projecting human expectations on this culture, and there's consequences for that.
Exactly. And you've got no prime directive to follow. You know, you are making the prime directive, and you're showing with every mission why you need the prime directive. When you're visiting alien cultures, you can't just walk into a culture as a human and just, you know, for all we know, a wave could offend them. A wave could be the equivalent of a swear. You know,
Yeah.
you just don't know. The universal translator is still very primitive.
Yeah.
And I always enjoyed those episodes where there was a misunderstanding because, you know, the crew were the first ones there. They were the first ones seeing it. And I found one thing did find interesting is was it Pajem, the Pajem episode where they go to the monastery. Okay, yeah, there's a point there. They discover the Andorians and everything, but did you not find it mildly presumptuous for for the Earth ship, knowing how the relationship between Earth and Vulcan is a little strained? You know, humans aren't that trusting of Vulcans. That you go to a sacred shrine and just say, "Hi, we've come to visit."
Yeah.
An active shrine. We just come to visit. We thought we'd say hello, you know, and they expect
Just
hospitality.
doing the tourist thing.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like going to well, what, as it's later revealed, it would be like going to the Pentagon, knocking on the door, and saying, "Can I have a tour?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I liked the fact that that was part of the character of the show is that humans were putting their eccentricities and basically putting them onto aliens' culture rather than being self-reflective. I also enjoyed the fact that in the first episode, you've got admirals wearing shirt and ties. It's something so
Yeah.
simple. It's close to us, but it's slightly modified, and they're using doors that open. You know, presumably locked with keys. Where's the key? You know,
Exactly.
they're doors. They're swing doors. The buildings are very much our design, our time. And the more automated stuff is left for the starships. It's left for the technology. You know, yes, okay, we've got revolving doors, we've got automatic doors, and you know we've got bigger plasma screens these days, and thinner plasma screens. But the design of the show, the design of the ship, it fit. And the only time it seemed so out of place and from our perspective so very, very, very far away from the original series was in A Mirror Darkly, where they found the Defiant. Because the contrast there, you see the 60s Star Trek style, and you see, and again with Trouble in Tribulations or Trial and Tribulations or whatever it was, whichever the DS9 crossover episode was, you saw the contrast between the limitations of 60s Trek and the design of modern Trek. But I think Enterprise bridged that gap very well.
Yeah,
and I think it's
they still
understated.
put a lot of switches and buttons.
Yeah.
In the ship, even their doors weren't automatic. I think they had to push a button
They did,
to open the doors
absolutely,
on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So, like, even though we today and even before Enterprise had doors with motion sensors that can detect a person walking and open them up, Enterprise is built more, I guess, like a submarine It's
Yes.
just not going to open a door because somebody walks up to it. And I know there's lots of jokes about TNG era doors that know when to open and when to stay closed based
Yeah.
on the plot.
Yeah. How close
So
the character is to it. You know, someone walking
yeah,
within the computer knows when you're going to walk through a door.
yeah,
Just when it goes wrong, there's just a lot of visits to sick bay.
yeah. Uh, yeah, I loved one of the big complaints about Enterprise season one that they resolved in, I think, season four as well through a two-parter was the fact that Vulcans were basically dicks in the early
I'll
seasons,
correct
and
you.
they
It
did
was a
not.
three-parter.
It was a
It was one
three-parter.
of the very rare three-parts. I think it was the Kashara episodes. But no, yeah, please
Yes,
continue. So I hate correcting
but
people.
but I know. Oh, please feel free to correct me. It's the only way I'll learn. Uh,
We should correct.
um,
We should correct other people.
the uh, the fact that the Vulcans were very seemed almost petty with respect to humans and looked down on humans, and not like how in Kirk's era and TNG era they are seen as equals, and that the
Mm,
Vulcans are very patronizing, and and then it's revealed why ultimately in season four, and then they start their era into the becoming the Vulcans that
yeah,
we all know and love.
yeah.
Um, it was it seemed like if it was by design, it was very well thought out.
Mm,
Like if this was the goal all along, we are going to show that, hey, not only did humans evolve from when they first started going out into space and the days of the TNG era, but the other races evolved too. Vulcans weren't exactly as we knew them. Like early relationships with humans were strained and stuff, and it took a while to build that relationship. And um, in retrospect, like a lot of people were angry with it, and even I at the time were like the Vulcans act very emotional, even
mm,
though they
yes.
talk about logic. Um, uh, it I'd like to believe in retrospect watching again that it was by design and it was really well thought out. You have those episodes where um, it's I don't know if it's called Ceasefire, where Shran demands Archer be present for negotiations with Soval over that moon that
Yes.
they're fighting over.
Yeah.
Like that is a great episode where these bumbling humans, because of their relationship with Shrank, get pulled in to be the diplomats because
Mm,
they're the only one both sides trust. And it starts establishing this kind of situation where humans are recognized in the future as diplomats,
mm.
as mediators, and those episodes were well done. And
Yeah.
Enterprise I think, doesn't get a lot of the credit it deserves
No.
for being what it is and what it was.
No, you're absolutely right. With with a lot of Enterprise episodes, um, it was as much a lesson for us. I know we with the later series, you felt like the characters were the grown-ups, the grown-ups of the galaxy, and they were arbitrating and negotiating and being diplomatic in so many episodes. Whereas you feel that Enterprise, we were the kids. We were the mouthy teenagers who were going out into the working world and expecting with expectations of what the world is and how the world should treat us. We're going out to other countries and we should be greeted with respect because we're humans and we got a certain amount of hubris. But
Yeah.
the Vulcans in Enterprise were the ever so slightly narcissistic adults, and they were trying to stop us from making mistakes that have been made previously, and but they did it with anger. There was a lot of anger and a lot of
Yeah.
uh, passive aggressiveness from
Yes.
from the Vulcans, and you had a situation where by season four, the season one Vulcans that were remaining were actually very angry. Not specifically about it, but you sensed their hostility and their anger when the child started growing up and wanting to leave the nest and make their own mark on the world. And the Vulcans were the parents, the controlling parents that didn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
That's
And I
how
think even Soval told Admiral
Forrest.
Von Armstrong, Forrest, thank
Yeah,
you,
yeah. Oh, he's
that
brilliant.
that they were concerned, that the Vulcans were concerned at how fast humanity had accomplished a lot of things that took them a lot longer, and so there almost suggested there was a bit of pettiness there and
Yeah,
jealousness.
yeah. Like an envious. When you're envious of a child that can do mental arithmetic better than you ever could.
Yeah,
You have that we all have that primal sort of jealousy when you don't know how to fix something, or something's broken, it's not working, and your kid comes up and goes, oh, stupid, it's working now, and you always think, oh, I mean, my dad did it to me when I fixed a VCR.
yeah.
And he was told by a professional that the CPU in it had gone, the board had died, whereas I just realised it was a slip belt, and I said, "Hey, oh, Dad," and he called me a smart ass and gave me a slap around the back of the head. But no, with regards to the Vulcan and Vulcans in the Enterprise situation. That's what I always put it down to. You're quite right. No, it was just pure jealousy, because we managed it sooner than they did. It took a world war for us to realise that we've got to work together, and we've got to behave a certain way. But we still weren't there yet. We were still killing animals for meat. Replication technology wasn't a thing. We'd
Yeah.
only just got the transporter. We got no tractor beam. It wasn't installed till Tuesday. We had we had no photon torpedoes in the first 2 seasons, and
No,
all the
just
technology.
conventional torpedoes, and they didn't even have phase cannons
No, they
on
didn't.
the ship
No, they
initially,
didn't.
not till fight or flight.
Fight or flight. Yeah, yeah. Where they had no choice but to install one.
Yeah,
But you had all these limitations, and you got people apprehensive about using the transporter, which I thought was really clever. Apprehension. People use the transporter all the time. The motion picture kind of painted a bad picture of the transporter and the things that can happen, but it's been a staple of Star Trek. You beam me up, beam me out, beam me off the exploding ship. But they went everywhere
yeah,
by shuttle because they simply didn't trust the transporter. What a
yeah.
novel idea that was. They didn't have phasers. They had
No.
pulse phasers until the end of the first episode, where they said, "Oh, these are phase pistols. They're brand new." Well, they're just phasers. Isn't that novel?
Yeah. And the fact that they're called phase pistols, the
Yeah.
slang term, didn't even come in yet.
No, because they are pistols. They're just
Yeah.
phase pistols. But I also liked the character development of all these different characters, especially Hoshi. I liked Hoshi in the sense
Yeah.
that she was this nervous wreck when she was first on the ship, and by season 4 she's just this hardened veteran. And it was the same way with a lot of the characters. But Enterprise, I will say this: Enterprise has, and this may be controversial as well, my favourite Doctor in all of Star Trek.
Phlox is really good. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to pair him against the Doctor from Voyager,
The
because
only
that guy's got so much character development and growth, and
Yeah,
saved the ship even. And
absolutely. And the only reason I say that, the reason I believe that, it's much more of a personal reason, is that Phlox is like your dad.
yes,
He's a father. He's a father. He's got 3 wives. Lucky git or unlucky git, depending on your philosophical bent on that one. He's a very fatherly figure. Beverly, Beverly Crusher. She's a doctor, a single mom. Bashir. He's a wunderkind. Who's got an ego to match. The
yeah,
holographic Doctor is just simply programmed that way, and he's programmed off of a real person who has the same personality, and he's the holographic Doctor to me is my number one but in a different category. Phlox to me is just the nicest of them all, and it's the one I enjoy watching the most because when he has a real moral dilemma, when his ethics are really challenged. John and Billingsley did such a wonderful job emoting that and expressing that, and I think he's one of the unsung ones. One of the unsung heroes is Phlox, but then he's part of a show that is full of unsung characters.
Yeah, he's also the only non-human Doctor in all the series, isn't he?
Yes.
Everyone else, like even the Doctor, is based off a human in Voyager.
No, you're quite right. Yeah,
And
he is. Yeah.
because he was an outgoing character, unlike very stoic T'Pol, he was the only other alien on Enterprise who could make observations
Yes.
about humanity. And because everybody's so familiar with the Vulcans, anybody who's a fan of Star Trek, then he can also make comments about her and Vulcan nature too, and contrasting it with humanity. So yeah, he was a really good character. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so who? I mean, this is a commonly asked question. No, you know what? I'm not going to ask that question. I'm going to ask this question. Out of all the series, pick one again each series of the 5 that are up here, because the other ones you just wouldn't pick. But no, out of these series, which one's your favourite character out of each? We'll yeah, let's go with that. Which one's your favourite out of each?
Probably Spock from the original series, just because he was so radically different from humans, right? Like once you've watched 30 years of Star Trek, you're spoiled by Vulcans, and Spock doesn't seem all that special anymore. But at the time when all you had was the original series, Spock was the guy. TNG, it's got to be Data. He's once again the outsider who looks at everything with childlike wonder, wants to be human, makes lots of witty observations. We know he's fully functional.
Programmed in multiple techniques.
Yes. Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is tough. There are a lot of characters. Like, you can complain about Enterprise, like Travis kind of stopped getting character development after a while, and just nothing happened with him. Discovery, if you weren't Michael Burnham, you were nobody. But and Voyager, once it became the 7 and Doctor show, Chakotay and didn't get a lot. Tom got a couple episodes. Harry got a couple. But that was basically it. But Deep Space Nine did an excellent job of every character. You got to see every character grow, even what were like minor characters, like Lita the Dabo girl, or Nog, who is just Nog's story arc is incredible.
The best character development of the entire Star Trek franchise, in my opinion, has got to be Nog. He goes the biggest distance, and it's one hell of a journey for him.
I liked Bashir. When the series started, I liked Bashir. He was like he was the smart young guy, super eager for frontier medicine and everything. Gosh, on all of these, and even the aliens, like Dukat had a story arc. Damar, of all people, had a really strong story arc. Jeez. Deep Space Nine is going to be the toughest one to pick a favorite character. I gotta say, Quark has so many brilliant observations. His root beer speech.
Just priceless.
I didn't like Jake that much. I guess.
I think
he's probably the least developed. Like, he became a journalist and went to the front lines, and
he's also played by a pardon me for saying so, apologies, Cyril Lofton, a very wooden actor. There was not much emoting with young Jake. If you look at stark contrast in The Visitor between him and Tony Todd.
Oh yes.
Light years apart. They're almost like two different people, not playing the same character. And I think Tony Todd did a better job of playing Jake than Jake.
Yes.
But no, I agree. DS9 would be the hardest one. The hardest one because you've got so many wonderful characters. I mean, you know, you and you're right when you say about the back characters, the characters in the background, the lesser known characters getting an awful amount of story. When they it's like when they introduce a character and they go, oh, actually, he's quite an interesting character we've made here. Let's develop him. And one of the biggest examples of that in Deep Space Nine was Michael Eddington.
Yeah.
For a character that came in as Starfleet security and a plot device to replace Odo, for Starfleet to say, well, we don't trust Odo, we're putting in our own security guy. They tried it earlier in the previous season with Rollins. I think his name was Rollins. Was it Rollins? Or was that Rollins was Voyager? Oh, I forget his name now.
Rawlings might have been the Pathfinder episode of Voyager. He might have been Barclay's supervisor, because that name sounds familiar.
That was... No, Rollins was Voyager episode 1. It was Scott McDonald who played Rollins. No, I'm getting my names all mixed up. Hawkins was the Voyager one.
Hawkins. There, thank you.
No, I forget the name of the. It was a security officer who came in and he was the first one to try and supplant Odo. I digress anyway. Michael Eddington's story I thought was brilliant, and where they decided to take him, and Sisko's obsession with him. Although Avery Brooks, I think, wasn't particularly. It wasn't his strongest performance when he was with Eddington, but he had a very particular style about him, and it took me a while to appreciate Avery's style. But he's very quickly become one of my favourite captains.
Yeah. When you said Eddington, all I could think of was as a Canadian, any references to Canada is always fun. And Eddington had a lucky loonie, which is of course our $1 coin with a loon on it. So lucky loonie was the Canadian coin. He asked Sisko about it specifically, and you're sitting there like, oh, he said something about Canada.
yeah, I wouldn't have picked up on that. Oh, brilliant! I didn't know that. Yeah, fantastic.
No, but yeah, Sisko. Did you ever watch the Captains? Is that the Shatner documentary?
One. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Avery Brooks just seems like wow, just like very interesting character in real life, because I remember I've seen him play Hawk on Spencer for Hire.
Yeah.
He was a different TV show and that. And he did a few movies, which is why he shaved his head in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
because he was playing Hawk for some of the Spencer movies.
And they didn't want. They wanted him with hair in the first 2 seasons. They wanted him to have hair because they didn't want to make it look like Captain Hook.
Or Rain on Picard's Parade, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
But he's given his personality in real life and how he plays a person as an actor, he's a very good actor. Because
contrast,
it's. Oh, thank you. I just had a minion bring me some water.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, there was a cost for this. I have to unlock the switch for her to play.
Naturally. No, yeah, he is a tremendous actor because Sisko is nowhere near in. He's not even in the same ballpark as Avery Brooks. Avery Brooks seems like he is just gone with the wind.
Yeah,
he is out there, and
yes.
It's like for his Sisko character, he had to pull it all back in and really focus. And Cisco's got some of the best lines, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Picard's got his famous speeches, and as long as you've bookended them, nothing that he says in Star Trek Picard will matter. But Cisco has got some damned good moments where he's really angry. I mean, Far Beyond the Stars was okay. Yes, it's the more go-to, approachable, award-winning episode, and people generally think it's one of the best episodes. I think it's an okay episode, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the concept of Benny Russell and where he, the parallels there. But Avery Brooks did such a good job with that. But the Avery, I think there was more Avery Brooks in Benny Russell than there is Avery Brooks in Cisco.
I don't know if this is just how they wrote the character or if it's just Brooks's acting style, but I think Cisco was definitely one of the more emotive captains.
Yes.
He had no problem joking around. He had no problem being dead serious. He had like most of the time you see Picard, he's very stoic. He's very
stuffy. Yes.
Very stuffy. Even Janeway is a bit of a stuffed shirt in comparison. Archer is headstrong.
He's kind of like a dad, in a different way to Phlox. He's sort of like the serious dad who likes to have a laugh and a joke, but as soon as he's in a mood or something isn't going right, he's like, cut the jokes,
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
A dad when it's nice, and a dad when he needs to be,
Yeah. Definitely.
But no, I've completely forgotten what we were talking about. This stream has gone on quite some time. It's
way longer than I thought it would. Wow.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, a good way to go about it. I think I'm going to cut some of this stream up and release them as videos, because you've got some really interesting points, stuff that I've not really considered. And I think the Drinker does that with his streams. He'll chop it up and release them as little videos. But I know that we've gone off on and we've jumped around an awful lot with what we've been saying about it, but it has just been a general discussion about Star Trek and where we sit with the franchise itself. But I just want to end. I just want to talk a little bit about season 3 of Picard and what I think about it. And now I've had a lot of people say, and this is it's probably going to go out as a video. I've had a lot of people say that they don't understand why my perspective. Basically, they don't understand my perspective on Picard season 3 because I'm praising it. Yet with the previous season and with Discovery, I've been ripping into it and destroying based on the same points that I'm making to praise Picard season 3. Now I'm going to use this time to just give a little bit of emphasis on what it is with season 3, and it goes back to a little bit about what we've already talked about. Excuse me. Season 3 of Picard is like a photo album that you're looking back on, and you're looking back on it with fond memories. And it's a pure nostalgic experience. So my reviews, although you say yours are scripted, a lot of mine aren't. I'll script the odd addendum here, but a lot of the time it's just me talking into a phone and trying to edit something together that makes sense. But season 3 of Picard, I likened it in one of my videos to fast food. It's not really good for you, and it doesn't really taste that good, but it's got the right ingredients in it to trick your brain into thinking it's good. and you kind of know on some level it's got no substance, but it is junk food Trek. Whereas Discovery and all of that is just a meal at a bad restaurant that's going to give you, food poisoning. Picard, I think, is very much a Picard season 3. I think is very much a series that is the junk food of Star Trek. I am enjoying the nostalgia trip, but the story is not solid. Sorry, I've just read a comment. Danger Man, any chance you could try a new outro song on your vids? Something instrumental, perhaps. The current song is an earwig in a bad way for me. I will look into that. The outro song. I've had a lot of questions about it, but I'll get into that in a little while. But I think Picard season 3, although I feel like I'm being disingenuous in my reviews, Picard season 3 is not that good. It is upon viewing experience, but you go back and you watch it again and it all falls apart. The entire narrative falls apart. Nothing about it makes any sense, and it's all retreading old ground. You've got the story of the changelings. We've done that. We had an entire, I believe, like a 4-season story with the Dominion and the changelings with Deep Space Nine, and it was all wrapped up very, very neatly in a little bow to say, well, the war is over and the story of the changelings is done. Why revisit that? And I think it's very much like a fan-made project. Rather than having the people who have created Star Trek and written for Star Trek and had all of this influence over Star Trek in the past come on board, what you have with season 1 and 2 of Picard is someone coming in and writing who doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know how to write, and they don't know what they're writing. They have no history with the franchise. And then you go to the other extreme with Picard season 3, and it is very much a fan. It is very much fan fiction, and it's not very well written, and it's not got a particularly coherent story. It is a fan made project, but it's also junk food. I don't know what you think of it. Well, how do you take the floor? I'll shut up.
I think a lot of what you're saying is right. It truly is like the MSG of the Picard series. It makes it taste good.
Yeah.
But it really isn't that good. And when that feeling wears off and you really start to think about it, it's like this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why we're praising it now more than season 1 or season 2? Discovery's Discovery. Picard season 1 and season 2, season 1 especially, seemed hell-bent on the deconstruction of Jean-Luc Picard, the character.
Yeah.
He's now just a shambling old man. Exactly. Nothing like his former self. People, and for a lot of people who saw the character of Jean-Luc Picard as a heroic figure, that leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Like, it'd be like if, you're a huge fan of Superman, the old Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and then 30 years later, if he had survived, they bring him back, and he's just like some wife-beating drunk who, like, more like Will Smith's character in Hancock. Everybody walks up and calls him asshole or whatever. You wouldn't like that. It wouldn't make you feel good. It's hard to be like, this guy was like one of the pinnacles of Starfleet, the best of humanity had to offer, and now he's just another schlub on the street that is in the way of everyone. That left a bad taste in my mouth, and them going back now to being like, it is, they just hooked the memberberry juice up into our veins, where it's like, remember Riker? Here he is. Remember Geordi? There he is. Yeah. Remember Worf? He was a Klingon warrior, but he's all better now. Like, even bringing Data back is so contrived. And they're doing this because the actor's old. The actor doesn't want to use makeup, and they don't have the Disney budget to do the de-aging in entire
Even
episodes.
when they tried, they failed because he looked like the Orville, the Orville bird, not the show. He looked like Orville. It just looked horrendous.
Yeah, and um, yeah, it really is just about hitting us in the feels.
Mm.
And they'll use everything. They'll use the, there's a picture of Voyager. I don't even know if that was like a new digital recreation of Voyager or just a still from the series.
I think
Probably a digital
it looked like like a high definition version of a still from Star Trek Online.
Yeah.
It looked overhauled, not overhauled, but overhauled. Like they've put layers on it. It kind of looked a bit too defined. It kind of looked like when you paint a model kit of Voyager, and you've put all these extra bits on it. It looks
Yeah.
a bit weird. Um,
Um, but and it works. Like,
yeah,
we are liking season 3. I'll tell you, my favorite moment in season 4 of Discovery was when they revealed the Archer station or
yeah,
Archer shipbuilding, and they played the Archer's theme,
yeah. The little hook
underscored it, and
up here.
that moment, it was like, oh, that feels so good. It's Archer. I remember that music and whatever.
Mm.
Um, but then it's like, well, yeah, but the episode's crap.
Yeah,
Um, and I think this is what we're doing with season 3. It's just a fire hose of it.
yeah.
It's every second there's some new callback or some new whatever. Even if the actors don't feel like they're quite playing the same characters anymore. Worf's character through season 3 has been strange. Like, he's all about peace, but he'll go and chop everybody's head off.
Yeah.
Um, his in Deep Space Nine and TNG, Worf had a lot of kind of philosophical statements, like well-written philosophical lines. Uh, I feel like the writing is poor. Nobody has a very good speech. Even Vadic, the villain, she just rambles on, and nothing seems coherent about what she's talking about. Like, I'm not following what she's saying at all. I'm not following her
No.
logic or lack thereof. Like, she just somebody used like the chat GPT to create some nonsense for her to say, and she's just saying it.
Yeah. They're trying to be a little bit too Christopher Plummer. I know it's Amanda Plummer. I know it's his daughter and everything. But they try. I think they try too much to, cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, because we like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But with her, it just doesn't work. She's definitely more honey bunny than menacing. you know, are you okay,
Yes.
honey bunny? Yeah, I'm okay, honey bunny. Um, it's definitely like that. With her, it is, like you say, it's just randomly generated words to form a semi-coherent sentence that is not related to what is actually going on in the episode. And Discovery, well, like I said, Picard is wildly deconstructed, and they feel like they've got to tear apart this great man. This Picard up here, on the stream background, that's Picard. That's the voice of authority. That's the voice of decision. That's the voice of ethical code. That's the voice of morality. He is the staple of the next generation. He's the firm fixing. It's always Picard, and when he's removed or he's in danger, you really feel it, because you feel like he's the glue that holds the ship together, and he's written that way because he's the captain. And what the Next Generation and other series managed to do is they're able to focus on other. They're able to focus on other characters, where and somehow make Picard not the main character, because he's not the main character. They're all the main characters, in my opinion. Now, what they did with this Discovery is they made a main character, And that was one of their biggest mistakes. They made Michael Burnham. And the show centers around Michael Burnham. And Michael Burnham's the key to everything. Everything's Michael Burnham. Michael Burnham saves the day. Michael Burnham saves the Federation. Michael Burnham saves this. And everybody else you don't get to really connect with, because they are just people in the background pushing buttons, saying the odd thing, coming out with a quirky comment, or
or applauding her at the end.
Yeah, applauding her, or disobeying direct orders and then getting praised for it. It's a mess, but they don't have that formula that always worked. And you can build anything around the formula of Star Trek. You put anyone on a ship, on the bridge of a ship, who's in charge, and then have characters out on adventures. You could write infinite Star Trek shows, as long as you kept coming up with different scenarios to put these people in. It's such a broad spectrum of stories that you could tell. However, they limit themselves to stories that are centric to one character, and not a particularly likable character. She's not likable to me in any way, shape, or form. She's possibly one of the worst characters I've ever seen on television. And
most of the time in television, you get if you're having a centralized character, they're a bit of an underdog. There's somebody that you root for. Or there's somebody like House in House MD, where he's the most miserable person on the planet, but he's right.
Yes.
And so, and that's his flaw, is that you don't like him. Michael Burnham's a bit like beer. She's the cause of and solutions to all the problems that happen in Star Trek, right?
I've never heard it described that way. I will just briefly interject. I will be reading some of the comments from the chat just a little bit later. Just for anyone in the chat, I'll go back and read some random ones.
But you're right. Like she, as a central character, she could do no wrong. And there is no hero's journey for her. She's just the hero on a journey. She doesn't seem to ever really face any real hardships that she doesn't immediately overcome. She's always the one person for the job, regardless of what area of science they need, or if they need a crack pilot, she's like the best pilot. She's the best math person. She's the best, the best person to investigate the tardigrade. Like, you can't wear every hat.
Do you ever have this in your working life where someone has to always be there, and they always think they know the answer, and they're always putting themselves in the situation, and they're like, yes, I know the answer to that, and I'm going to solve that. She's like that. She's everywhere, but everybody just seems to milk over her, and the way that the character is put across. Everyone applauds her. What kind of... And don't get me wrong, that you always have the scene in movies, the victory scene, the triumphant scene, where I don't know how the actors do it, because to me, fake cheering and fake acting, oh, this is amazing, this is good, has always made me cringe. If I ever have to sort of fake cheer, I just can't do it, because that genuine elation is something that's very rare. But you get this sort of cheering going on in films whenever anyone's victorious, and it's a real emotional release. It's thank God for that, the tension's over, phew. But in Star Trek, they don't do that, because we've evolved past that point. We've become a little bit more grown up, where we can go, we got out of that in one piece, and there's not a victory celebration every time the Defiant destroys a ship, or every time the Enterprise gets out of the anomaly. Everyone just sits there and goes, phew, that was close, we nearly died there,
drinks in 10 forward.
Yeah, let's go for a pint, because that was a bit stressful. But Discovery is like, whenever they get out of a situation or a problem, all the officers turn around and go, Yeah, well done, Michael Burnham. You got us out of the situation. And Burnham just goes, yep, that was me. And there's no, you don't relate to that because although we do like, we do like to, you know, feel our hero's victory. It's just not the way Star Trek does it, generally speaking. And Discovery made a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, and I think it's suffering as it should. It's being cancelled. I just know that I've got some really good moan material coming up. Someone in the comment section has complaining. I think they're accusing me of being another bearded incel neurotic follower. But my point is, I've got plenty of videos worth just in Discovery coming up, because you know Discovery season 5 is going to be bad because that's the trend. Now, you could say the same thing about Picard, and they've turned it into something quite different for season 3. They've tried something different, a different approach, and it for the most part it seems to be working generally for people. But Discovery is written by the same people. It's the same crew, it's the same cast, it's the same team of writers, it's the same 21 executive producers or whatever it is. It's the same structure and formula as the previous 4 seasons. And if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And that, it's the definition of insanity. These people are insane because they keep expecting different results when they're when they're doing the same thing over and over again. And I can guarantee Discovery season 5 will be some grand bad guy, some grand foe from another galaxy or another dimension or something. We can only hope for a subspace implosion that's going to destroy the entire universe. That is New Trek. And Space Jesus has got to save it, but she can't, and she's not victorious in the end. We can only hope for that. But I get people all the time, just to digress again slightly. I get people all the time telling me that I'm moaning about New Trek, and I should just don't watch it if you don't enjoy it. Why are you watching? You must be hate watching, and I really hate that term, hate watching. I'm watching someone's interpretation of something that I really care deeply about, something that has guided me through the formative years of my life and made, in some sense, has made me who I am today. Because everything around us affects us. People are telling me to stop watching something because you don't like it. So why do you watch it? I watch it because it's claiming to be something it isn't, and you have to know what you're dealing with. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does. Like, and some of it is a bit like it's a car wreck that you're passing on the highway. You have to slow down and take a look.
Yeah.
Because being a 10-year-old seeing TNG in 1987 and seeing them holding things that look like iPads.
Yeah.
And using paper thin handheld computers, and that was just like, that's an impossibility. People, the best we've got is somebody has like a Commodore 64 in their house, or the 386s that just came out. And these are massive, noisy, slow boxes, and this idea of like these big giant monitors, but yet somehow they have these thin screens that they're holding in their hands and doing stuff with. Like that was the future you wanted to aspire to.
Yeah.
And in some regards, I'm fairly certain that because of all the love that TNG era Trek has, and even TOS, a lot of the tech we developed in the 90s and 2000s is let's make that happen. Flat handheld computers are awesome. Let's do that. Handheld communicators, flip phones are awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I think Shatner had a documentary on maybe it was Shatner. Somebody did about the future, about how the present was created as a result of Star Trek and all our technology. I haven't watched it, but I'm aware of it. And so when this is what you expect from Star Trek. You expect this is where we should be going. This is what we can achieve. and then they bring out Discovery saying this is Star Trek, and you're like, I want more of that feeling, I want more of that optimism, I want more of that hope. And all the lights on the bridge are turned off because every scene is in darkness. um, the people on the ship are indistinguishable from anybody you'd see on the street now today. They aren't evolved humans.
No.
They're uh, they they give us nothing to aspire to. And then season 1 of Picard brings back one of the most beloved characters and deconstruct him, while everybody from today basically tells him to F off. And and you're just like, why are you ruining this? You've now, I don't aspire to be part of it. Like when I was a kid, I'd want to join Starfleet, even though I don't like military anything. I did 1 year Boy Scouts and was like, videos, I'm out.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been in Starfleet. I would have loved to have been on a starship.
Yeah.
And watching Discovery and watching Picard, I look at how they're portraying Starfleet, and it's like, I wouldn't want that. That just looks like a mess of narcissist power struggles and crazy people. And like,
do you know what? You're on that point. You struck me with Picard season 1. There was a flashback scene, and I genuinely think that I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to review each episode of season 1 after season 3 is done. I'm going to go back and just do it the same way I would do my normal reviews, just for a bit of perspective. But when you've got, I believe it to be I think it's episode 2, where it begins with the flashback, where Picard gets fired, ousted, cast out of Starfleet. Now, he's been cast out of Starfleet because he offered his resignation and Starfleet accepted it, because he was trying to push Starfleet to go and rescue the Romulans from this star that destroys the entire Romulan star empire. They can't just... they've got hundreds of thousands of ships and they can't get themselves off of Romulus, apparently, because there's that freaking helpless... God,
they were all busy patrolling the neutral zone.
Yeah. They were all cloaked and hiding. They couldn't find each other. So Picard needs to mount a relief effort, and the androids take over and destroy Utopia Planitia and destroy this fleet of identical starships. They're all identical.
Oh, the copy-paste fleet.
The copy-paste thing, yeah. And so Picard goes to Starfleet and says, look, you've got to do something about this. And they say no. And he says, well, if you don't do what I tell you or what I'm asking you to do, I'm going to resign. And they say, well, fine, fuck off, resign. That alone pissed me off, because Jean-Luc Picard, the guy who saved the galaxy on multiple occasions, comes to you and says, we need to do this. We need to go and rescue the Romulans. And Starfleet accepts his resignation. But further to that, and this is where I completely lost me completely, because the Starfleet doesn't operate this way. You have Raffi, one of my most hated characters. I hate Raffi. I do. As a character, she's just dog shit. I just cannot abide her, and I've sworn it in the stream. She gets me that angry. Sorry, YouTube, don't demonetize me. She says to Picard, okay, how did the meeting go? The Picard goes, not very well. They've basically, accepted my resignation because they're not going for it. And she turns to him and says, we don't need Starfleet. We can do this. We have to go and rescue the Romulans. We don't need Starfleet. Screw Starfleet. Bugger off Starfleet. We'll do it without them. We'll go and rescue the Romulans ourselves. Fair enough, ambitious plan, I get it. But then she gets a message where Starfleet have essentially fired her because, which she can't get fired from Starfleet, it's not a job. She gets cashiered out of Starfleet because she's been associating with Picard and because she supports Picard. So Starfleet has said, no, you're out. And then, after giving Picard the speech about we can help the Romulans, you and I can go and form a fleet and go and do it, she then goes, oh great, I get lumbered in with you and I get fired. Thanks a lot. Screw you, Jean-Luc, or JL, or whatever it is. And she buggers off. there was no logical progression to her being. It was just a chance for them to beat on Picard, and that's
Well,
half the problem. And I will answer a
and you can
question in the
see.
chat from someone who just
Okay,
says,
sure.
"Didn't realise you were streaming." I do apologise. I didn't set up a premiere because we didn't know we were streaming until we were streaming. So yeah, sorry. Carry on, Clayton.
Um, your comment about Starfleet refusing to help the Romulans
Yeah,
is once again right off the hop. That's a massive deconstruction of Starfleet
of
for a
course.
million and one reasons. Because for one, um, Starfleet always does humanitarian missions. Like it's kind of their goal. For two, um, uh, the Vulcans are still part of the Federation. The Vulcans were going through reunification processes with Romulus based off of Spock's work.
Mm.
Why wouldn't they be interested in helping out their brethren, so to speak?
Yeah.
And three, the Romulans were allies during the Dominion War,
Mm.
which was only 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And that branch of goodwill, even if they had fallen back into enemy kind of the way that the Soviet Union were allies during the war and then Cold War afterwards, even if the situation had played out that way again, wouldn't that be seen as an excellent way to establish solid diplomatic relations with an enemy to
Yeah.
help them out, like Undiscovered Country?
Oh yeah.
They
Absolutely.
went to help the Klingons, even though nobody on the Enterprise wanted to deal with them.
Yeah.
Um, it's just it was so not Starfleet. Is it didn't make any sense, but it had to happen in order to drive the plot. And there's a lot of that in New Trek, where it's like it happened because the plot said so. And
It's kind of like, how do we get from point A to point D? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll just jump straight there. We won't follow any line of logic. And Picard season 1 had this for on a few occasions where there was no logical jump. It was an illogical jump from one reaction to another, and that is just piss poor writing. That there's just really weak, narrow-minded, and that's not what Star Trek is. Starfleet is the Federation is a character in itself, and Starfleet is the, if you like, militaristic arm of the Federation.
yeah,
And Starfleet is flawed. Of course it is, because the Prime Directive is flawed. Okay, yes, it's the number one tenet or commandment of Starfleet. It's general order number one. You don't interfere. But it's not always so cut and dry. And Starfleet did, and Star Trek did a very good job of telling that. But
yeah,
Starfleet always approached it from a sympathetic or empathetic way. And one of the characters in the Next Generation that I found to be the kind of stamp of authority of Starfleet, and quite a counter to what this sort of dreamy version that you've come to love of Starfleet, was Admiral Nechayev, because the character of Nechayev in Next Generation was just, no, I'm stomping my foot on the ground. You let a Borg go. You enabled the Borg to come. She's very cut and dry, and there was a little bit of a firmer Starfleet there. But Discovery and New Trek in general take that to the extreme, to the point where it criticizes itself. The show criticizes itself. Starfleet is the bad guy, but the entire tone of Picard was set with that first interview that he's doing with the Federation News Network, where he, the interviewer was asking him, what went on, and he just goes, "It isn't Starfleet. Starfleet's not Starfleet. Starfleet is, we had a moral choice to make," and he's basically saying that Starfleet isn't Starfleet anymore. And what good is that for a basis of a Star Trek show? You have to have your fundamental principle, your fundamental, your baseline. You have to have your baseline. It's like I was saying earlier, Picard is a staple of the Next Generation. The Federation's a staple. Yeah. These are unchanging institutions that don't change. They only grow. They don't devolve. They evolve. The Federation started as in Enterprise. You know, if you go canonically, it started in Enterprise, and it was always constantly learning. And it doesn't devolve. The Dominion was a long-standing institution that lasted thousands of years because they didn't change. They conquered. They didn't change. They didn't devolve. They remained the same. The Romulans, they evolved. The Klingons, they evolve. Well, actually, to be fair, the Klingons sort of go back and forth. They're very political for a warrior race. But the Ferengi, they evolve. Every institution evolves for the better. But suddenly Starfleet's the bad guy. And I never understood why they went that way. I don't know whether...
What's weirder is that they didn't even give any exposition to explain it. It's not like they said, I've noticed over the last 20 years, a bunch of hardliners taking positions of power in Starfleet and changing whatever. And now when you're saying this, it's making me wonder, are they going to blame season 1 on the changeling infiltration?
Oh, okay.
That would be quite a twist.
My hat goes
Why
off
would
to
the
you.
Federation stop acting like the Federation? Because a bunch of changelings are now in there changing the direction of everything.
Because it was no longer Starfleet. Wow, I'll tell you what, this is getting made into a video. this section, because I think that, again, you have to wonder whether they're intelligent enough to write something like that. Now, you've come up with this theory, and it's a fantastic theory. That really works. But you have to, we've got to analyse that over the coming weeks, I think, and just see, is that going to be possible over the coming days? And just say, is that going to be possible? What problems might come up? But we'll give it some more thought. But are they intelligent enough to do something like that? To write
intelligent enough to use Duquesne, even though they had the actor.
It's a high expectation. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, and I've made this point in one of my videos, I forget which one it was. You have to have the self-awareness and be perfectly prepared to be self-critical if you're going to write a story that has a plot point that denigrates what came before in terms of the stuff that you've created. You have to be self-aware enough to do that. And so far, New Trek has not done that. They have not said anything. I mean, it's season 3. Forgive me, has done that in using, like we said before, the Shaw character to comment on what came before. But they gave Terry Matalis the reins this season. Is he got the guile and balls enough to be able to do that and say, we've been around since the Romulan star exploded. We saw a weakness there. We knew the star was going to explode. We saw a weakness in the Federation and we exploited it. And we used that to change Starfleet and what it was.
And you know, one of the points I was going to bring up before I had this realization was that why are the changelings doing this now? The Dominion War was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
If there was a splinter faction that was hell bent on destroying the Federation, why not attack right after the war or whatever? Because at that point, you know, the Federation's still pretty crippled. They lost a ton of ships. In those battles. Like the Alpha Quadrant's is a mess. But then, if the changelings are playing the long game, this changeling faction, then maybe they have been in operation since the end of Deep Space Nine and have been gradually replacing people and making, like, that would be really clever if they came back and was like, that's why season 1 everybody's a jerk.
Yeah,
they were all changelings.
Yeah.
But
even Admiral sheer effing hubris.
Yes.
God, that was embarrassing.
Oh. That has been referenced. That is a meme in and of itself
It
now.
is.
I've seen that clip used so many times.
Oh my god! I used it in one of I think I used it in one of my In a Nutshell videos for Picard season 1, because I did a basic in a nutshell. I wanted to explain what happened in the episode. I only did 2 of them. I never sort of followed through with any more. But I made this joke where Picard goes, I need a ship, a small crew, and I need to go on a mission. Would that be possible? And she just turns around and goes, "Chef, hubris," the way she does. And
Yeah.
Picard just gets up and goes, very well, I shall take the USS Effing Hubris. When will it be ready? And I had to put a disclaimer on the screen saying this bit didn't happen. But it's so ridiculous. It should have probably happened that way. But that is such an interesting theory. That would never have occurred to me. That would be a good way to explain away the previous seasons. And right now, to be fair, I would be absolutely amazed if any of these YouTubers who have seen this the entirety of this show were actually watching this stream, but they'll know because they've seen it.
Yeah.
But again, they're not massively well known for criticizing themselves because they think they're right. Discovery will never be anything other than it is because they're not self-aware enough, and they have such hubris attached to what they're doing. They cannot believe
that's
Stacey.
The Stacey Abrams cameo.
Oh God!
I'm not American.
No.
I don't know who Stacey Abrams is.
Neither did I.
When she appeared, I'm like, why are they making such a big deal out of this person?
The president of the Federation.
President of Earth.
Oh, Earth, yeah.
Yeah, because there wasn't the Federation.
No, that's right. Yeah, beg your pardon. Yeah. No, that was. I knew that.
And if people today, like celebrities or even politicians who love Star Trek and want a cameo, like heck, Seth MacFarlane was an ensign in Enterprise.
He was, yep. He got yelled at that
episodes.
trip.
Iggy Pop was a Vorta.
Very recognisable Vorta as well.
Yeah, and those are
members
cool.
of the Dominion.
Yeah. I have no problem with that because that's cool. Like when Hawking was in TNG as himself, as a hologram of Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
Like those are cool things. But to take and even if a politician, even like a current president wanted to play some low-level ensign or an alien diplomat or something, but to have a current politician come in and be like, I'm president of the Earth, like, really?
Well, I'm sorry. You had, was it Dr. Mae Jemison? She was a transporter chief in The Next Generation. She was the first black female astronaut.
Right.
First African American in space, I believe. And she came in, and she was just a transporter chief. Now, it would have been far too much on the nose, I would have thought, to have her come in and I don't know, play a captain of a starship. But it was a nice little cameo. It was very respectfully done. She's this woman of fantastic stature, and she's achieved what very few in this world would actually achieve. But she's a transporter chief. Yeah. And what a wonderful little cameo that was. But like you say, to have a current day politician, you know, to have Hillary Clinton come in and say, by the way, I just happen to be the president of the galaxy. I think that would there's and it points to a certain political lean with Star Trek, and a lot of the industry now are starting have leaned left. And I always this argument comes up, and this argument in itself is a stream's worth of stuff. Yeah. But you have politicizing Star Trek. Now people say Star Trek's always been political. It's always pushed the boundaries, and it has. It really has. And you can't counter that argument. You know, you had Star Trek questioning a lot of modern day politics at the time, and forming them into stories, again using the aliens as as the
proxies.
Yeah, proxies.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for that. And you had that, but politics. Politics has not always been this binary.
Mm.
There was a lot of there was a lot of nuance to the way Star Trek portrayed it, and what I liked about it is that it was presenting the case from a neutral point of view.
Yes.
There was always it was a center ground. They were presenting the story from a neutral perspective and saying, right, okay, you got this alien race that's got half white, half black faces, and the other one's got half black, half white faces. And we want to talk about racism, and we want to talk about the way people are viewed. You know, we want to talk about old sentiments from Abraham Lincoln and why there's a black woman on the bridge, manning of the space phone.
Yeah.
You know, we want to talk about sexuality, about Dax and the lesbian kiss. We want to
Yep.
we want to do that, and we want to talk about these things, but we're not doing it. And the story's not. We're not doing it from any particular side, and the story's not dependent on that moment. You know, it's
Yes.
not based around them trying to push this stuff in. We need to talk about this subject, so let's write an episode that makes people think. But modern Star Trek doesn't do that. It goes, ha ha, we lean this way, and our content will reflect that. If that makes sense. I might get cancelled for saying that, but
it does. And I mean, you can always introduce controversial, even if controversial ideas. In the 90s, a lesbian kiss was a controversial idea. Mm-hmm. Now it isn't. Yeah. You can introduce them, I don't want to say tactfully. I don't think that's the right word, but look at the way they did that. It wasn't like, oh, here's two hot chicks and we're going to make them kiss.
No.
It was, this is an alien, inside her's a slug, and in the previous body it was in was a man who had a romantic interaction with this woman, but it remembers those feelings and it acts on those feelings despite being in a new body. And what ends up happening is you got two aliens kissing and it looks like a lesbian kiss, you know, to audiences. So it exposes that, but if you follow the story, that's not what's happening. And
it's not
I
the
realize
focus.
That it's not the focus. Yeah. And I realize that they're still humans, actors, and that was still two women kissing. And if people were bothered by that in the 90s, they were going to be bothered by it regardless of what the alien slug we're pretending is in them is doing.
Yeah.
But it seems to be with less nuance in New Trek. There isn't an alien stand-in because all the aliens are just like us. And so something like the Stacey Abrams cameo, it was just like, here's a politician being a politician, but being like the most powerful politician on Earth. And it was like, that felt tacky, I guess would be a, you know, and maybe a lot of people thought it was a great and powerful moment. I don't know. I think it would have been cooler if they had like Barack Obama as an ensign in the background or something. Like that would be that would be like mind blowing. I wouldn't need to see him as president of anything. It's
exactly.
Just, oh my God, he's there.
They lack subtlety with what they want to accomplish and what they want to put across with it. They lack subtlety. That's why, you know, if they did have Barack Obama, he'd never been in a song on the bridge. He'd be like commander of the biggest starship or something like that. You know.
When you have cameos like that, you kind of want it to be Easter eggy, kind of hidden, kind of hard to notice. And this is like they just take the basket and start throwing eggs at you.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, they need to ram it down your throat, and continuously hit you with it. And the other major issue when it comes to New Trek. Not only politicizing it in the sense of a uneven split between the two major political bents, I suppose. It would also be the transition from family-friendly Star Trek to severed babies' heads, and that to me ruins the entire experience on that level, because I can't show my children Star Trek Discovery, for example. I wouldn't want to, because people are being murdered all the time, and people are being Star Trek's dealt with this, but it's always been tactfully done. And even the Orville. Now the Orville is a bit of a loose cannon with this stuff, because the Orville is in the style of the Next Generation, and it's got the same sort of mentalities and the same sentiments as the Next Generation, and it's got some violence in it, but don't you find it's still tastefully done? There's a scene where Mercer, they're on Alara's planet, and he has to wear a special suit that stops him from being crushed by the gravity. And there's a scene which I found absolutely brutal, but it was so tastefully done because there was very little gore. And that's the scene where his suit fails around his shin and it just implodes. And although the implication was there was no real gore to it. It was just a case of, holy crap, you don't fuck with the gravity on this planet. And the Next Generation had its share of violence. There were people died in it all the time. There were people murdered. There were people. There were all sorts of sort of gruesome ideas, but they were so tastefully done that you could show your kids it, and if they were like us, they didn't quite process what they were seeing. They didn't quite understand it, but they can enjoy the experience. Now you can't do that with Star Trek Discovery. This Star Trek Discovery, no. You've got. Of course, you've got all the modern problems of mansplaining and all these ideas, these silly ideas that people think are a major problem in society, being translated to the screen, and you've got all of these situations that the crew are in. You've got in Discovery. You've got, obviously, Discovery is the ship. It's got the mushroom network, which is again a stream in itself. You got the mushroom network, and the ship actually spins dimensionally and physically into another part of the galaxy or whatever. He uses the Mercury.
Cool effect.
It is a cool effect, and it's a cool concept. And in some ways, it's a cool concept about what could happen when that goes wrong. But you've got to be subtle when you're showing it, because they go to the sister ship. The sister ship's spore drive has failed. It's attempted to spore jump, and everyone on it didn't make the jump. So everyone on it impacted all the bulkheads and exploded and all of that. And there was just gore everywhere. It was like a scene from an 80s action film, which with an 18 rating. And I thought, that just doesn't have any place in Star Trek. You can have gore, but do it subtly. Suggest it. Make it suggestible. Don't show it. You don't need to show an alien body inside out, or intestines strewn across the wall. A perfect example of that would be Voyager with the Herodian. You never really saw them pulling the intestines out of 7 of 9. You saw them pulling. You saw them suggesting what was going to happen to her.
Yes.
And that was very powerful. If I'd seen them doing that to an alien, Enterprise did it with the ship full of corpses. In the first season, they come across a ship, and the other people are being drained.
Fight or flight. Fight or flight.
Was it fight or no? There was an episode. I forget what it was. They boarded a ship, and it was, the aliens were being drained of their vital fluids. It was to be drained of the. It was a very early one, because Hoshi was still scared to go in a space.
It is fight or flight.
Oh, is it fight or flight? I beg your pardon. No, the other.
I looked it up. I cheated.
The other episode I'm thinking about is the one with the aliens who keep coming back and attacking the ship.
Oh, those guys, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, it is Fight or Flight.
Silent Enemy.
That's the one. Yeah. You are defenseless. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was creepy.
Thank you.
Well, the episode.
No,
your
It
impression.
was. Oh, thank you.
Me, yeah.
No, it was. Yeah, that was really creepy because they're finding. Oh, blimey! I've just noticed we've got a $10 super chat from Ugo Vuotto. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. That's
Nice.
very awesome. Got to go to a children's birthday party. Interesting stuff. Live long and prosper. And you, my friend, thank you so much for the super chat. That's really made my day. Yes, absolutely. Took me years to master that. But yes, spot on, Ugo. Thank you very much. But yeah, the I guess my point in general was, don't show gore if you don't need to. You are cutting off a lot of potential Star Trek fans for your show. You're wanting to reach new audiences and younger audiences. I don't think showing a severed baby's head is the way to go. Whether it's fake or not, whether it was a fake out or not, it's not the way to go. It's not the way to get new audience members in. It's in fact a way to make sure that you're not going to get a new generation of Star Trek fans. If that makes any sense.
It does. Like I can't watch Discovery with my kids. Not that I can drag them to most Star Trek. Actually, they want to watch the animated one. Why does the name escape me? No, not Prodigy.
That's the other one, Lower Decks. Lower Decks.
Yeah, Lower Decks. Yeah. And I don't think Lower Decks they're not quite old enough for Lower Decks, but
no,
they're like it looks like adult animation that we're not allowed to watch, so we want to watch that one.
Well, it's when they're mopping up what's left over on the holodeck after Will Riker's been in there. It's not. It's. I don't think it's aimed at children particularly. It's a very Rick and Morty style. Star Trek, which again is a fascinating concept and it should really work, but for me it doesn't.
Yeah, I never watched the animated series. That never played on reruns when I was a kid, and I never bothered trying to find it. Like the animated series they did with the original series cast in the 70s, I think it was.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they all came in a voice.
I never saw any episodes of it, but. Star Trek to me has always been live action, and so animation kind of takes me out of it. And the fact it's a comedy series, I'm one of those people who likes to imagine that Star Trek's more like a documentary, and that's going to be our future. And a cartoon about it kind of takes me out of it, but that's just me.
Yeah, I don't think you can satirize Star Trek and take it seriously at the same time. I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And Lower Decks, I don't think it's not hit any. It ended up pissing me off more than it did being a tribute. It ended up making me cross because they were taking the piss. And again, if the people who created the first 5 generations of Star Trek, the guys up here, if they then said, well, I tell you what, we want to do an animated Star Trek where we go back and we just generally take the piss out of everything that we've ever done. We're very self-aware, but that's what we're going to do. Then I'd probably treat it with a bit more respect, and I'd probably sit and watch it because that's them being very self-deprecating. And I do like a bit of that, someone who can take the piss out of themselves enough. And I respect a lot of celebrities that do that. People who take themselves too seriously, in my opinion, are silly. But I think because the new Trek guys, generally speaking, are in charge of this, I think it just becomes a very disrespectful. It ends up being a very disrespectful tribute. It's not. I don't think its heart's in the right place at all. Or maybe my heart's not in the right place when I'm watching it, because I just take it as an insult. And maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just, be a bit more understanding. But with regards to it, no, I just can't abide it.
Yeah.
I think
I heard. I want one last thing I want to ask.
yeah, of course.
I heard because we should probably wrap it up. I think it's been
I
what,
was going to
two
say, yeah.
hours or 2.5.
No,
I don't have a timer. So.
we're up to 3.5 hours now, mate.
Oh my goodness! So
So we're currently
Tempest
at
Fugit,
3.
eh?
Yeah, I tell you, yeah, absolutely.
They announced there's going to be a Starfleet Academy series,
Oh, yes, they did.
and I can't help but think, given the success of Riverdale and Wednesday and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, that it's going to be a teen series along those lines because they're going to copy what's successful and they're just going to put everybody in a cadet uniform in a school, and it's going to be just and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will be a serious study of what makes what makes or breaks candidates to be Starfleet officers.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but feel like there's going to be a lot of keggers and
Yeah, a lot of nightclubs.
drama and nightclubs.
Yeah, alien rock music or alien dance music and trance and all this techno stuff.
And maybe if that's what sells for the current generation, I don't know. I'm still bitter about the fact that I'm not current generation anymore.
I'll be honest, I'm exactly the same. I mean, you're probably around a similar age to me. Maybe I don't want to be insulting.
Gray hair, it makes me look older than I am. I'm 44. But...
I'm 4 years behind you. I've just turned 40 this year, so. Yeah, you're not too far ahead of me. We're practically the same generation anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm in some ways I'm upset I'm not the current generation, but in some ways I'm damn thankful I'm not the current generation and everything that they're being subjected to.
Yeah.
I think we should probably. I'll read some of the comments out from the entire stream. I'll just go through and cherry pick. Because there are some great ones and there are some typical not so great ones. Someone's raised a really good point. Born to Get Busy, which is a great YouTube name. The Spore Drive idea was stolen from a game developer, Anas Abdeen, and that is so very, very true. Now, legally speaking, it's not true. It's false. But we all know. It's when you know, and that would be again. I think I want to come back with you very soon and do another stream because this has been an absolute fantastic stream. It's been miles better than even I predicted to be. I've loved every minute talking to you. It's been fantastic, and we should definitely do it again. But yeah, and Anas Abdeen really suffered there. As far as I'm concerned, because it just points to absolutely no originality.
I remember hearing about it, but I don't remember the details. I do know there was like a tardigrade and a spore network and the same sort of thing, but I never really heard how that got resolved.
A blonde gay engineer as well. It's like, oh, come on, really? Yeah. I'm again just trying to speed read here. In Picard season 2, it made no sense that Guinan had a bar named 10 Forward. I made this point in one of my videos. Why the hell would it be called 10 Forward? It's the whole point of 10 Forward being called 10 Forward because it was on deck 10 and it was forward of the damn ship.
Yes. The forward section of the ship. Yes.
Yeah, so why would be again? They're wanting to make these references to draw you in and to say, oh look, do you remember? But they're getting all the details wrong and they're not looking into it. I find that hilarious.
She had a bar called 10 Forward on the ship. Let's put her on number 10 Forward Street. 400 years in the past. Yeah. That'll make sense.
Don't get me wrong. If 10 Forward on the Enterprise was named 10 Forward and it was like in the middle of the ship, I wouldn't mind so much. But I've got fact files under my bed, the Star Trek fact files, and they just need to read them. Everything you want to know about the Star Trek universe is in those 19 binders. It's absolutely ridiculous. End of Picard was basically Mass Effect 3. Yeah, you're telling me. Harry Kim should have stayed dead. I've already read that one. Starfleet is like a root beer drink, all bubbly. Danger Man, any chance you try... Oh, I've read that one.
I
If
seem
you
to
do have
recall
any
you
questions,
explaining Richard.
sorry.
Sorry.
If you do have any questions, chat now would be the time to ask them, because we will be ending the stream very shortly.
Yeah, and I've had like 2 glasses of water during this entire thing. So.
Yeah. I've had a kind of an unnamed soda drink, or an unknown soda drink, and I've had 2 teas before the stream. My bladder is actually quite full. If the last 2 episodes of Picard season 3 knock it out of the park, will this season erase any of the damage done to the franchise by seasons 1 and 2? I think that's a good question to possibly end on, because did you want to go first?
This could be a bit like the 3-parter in Enterprise, where they explain the Klingons' foreheads from TOS. Like, if they brought in a good enough writer who's like, yeah, seasons 1 and 2 were crap, I'm going to write a plausible reason as to why.
Yeah.
And they make it that everything that happened with the Romulans in season 1 was all just the changeling infiltration that's been going on since the end of the Dominion War. That would make me feel much better about this series. I still would hate season 1, and season 2 was just so poorly written.
Yeah, you couldn't like it if they tried.
Yeah. And yes, there are tons of plot holes in season 3, but it would feel a bit like a course correction.
You could also view it in the same way as is it Doomcock, who he views Star Trek V as Kirk's dream around the campfire, and that's a great way to look at it. And you rewatch the film from that perspective, and you're like, yeah, I can view it that way. And suddenly the 5th film, which was appalling but good in its own way, is suddenly not canon because it's a dream that Kirk had. So yeah, I agree that could wrap it up. And you could probably go back and watch the other 2 seasons, or these 1 season, the first season, and see it in a different way. But it would only solve the Starfleet problem. It wouldn't solve the Soji Darge problem. It wouldn't explain how Picard was able to survive an explosion to the face being 80 years old. You know, that flung him 50 feet, you know. It wouldn't explain why Swindon Spock would, the Romulan brother. Hello there, my name's Spock. My name's not Spock, but I'm like Spock, and I'm a Romulan. That guy. Wouldn't explain why his character was so stupid. It wouldn't explain why the Mass Effect ending was so horrible. It would. I don't think it would actually make up for it. I think it would patch the wound a little bit. It'd be like a couple of stitches in a really long wound. Something that's affected a lot of Trek fans in that sense. I don't think it would actually solve it. It would put it in a better standing, but I don't. And it would be a great idea. I think your theory's absolutely bang on, and I'd love it to be the case. But your thoughts on every episode that come out, I always sit and read. I read all my comments anyway. For those either in the comment section listening to this video, I do read your comments. I don't always respond to them, but I always read them, and your points are just spot on. So I
thank you.
Thank you for coming on to my channel and gracing me with your presence. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and it's definitely something I want to do again. For those of you who are watching who don't know Clayton, he's got his own channel. He's which I hope you've all gone over there and hit that subscribe button over on his channel to let's get his channel moving. He's made some absolutely cracking videos when it comes to Quantum Leap, and certainly the Quantum Leap reboot that was recently been made, much to people's general disgust. And I I've absolutely loved this stream. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for
This
coming
was
on, my
great.
friend.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And
Absolutely.
we will definitely have to do it again.
Yeah, I'll just have a word with you after the stream before we go, and I'll end the stream now, guys. And thank you so much for everybody who's come here to watch, and thank you for all of your comments. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Ugo Verotto, if I get not butchering your YouTube name, and thank you. Setlick3 for the many comments. It's always great to hear from you. Reaver of Jill Sandwiches, thank you for coming in late on one of my streams again. It is always a pleasure to have you here for a split second before I leave. But it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you to all of you. It's been a genuine pleasure. And I will see you all later. Don't forget to go over to @ClaytonRumley and subscribe. Thank you, Clayton, so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Ta-ta for now, guys. Look after yourselves, look after one another, and my usual diatribe of an exit comment. Bye-bye, everybody.